Gene and Tom join?
I think so.
Oh, maybe on.
I don't have anybody on Zoom. Right now, it's just us. Oh, here comes user. Oh, no.
Oh, gosh. I almost wonder if you should.
Recording in progress.
Is there any way to, like, just block all video automatically? Doesn't look like it. Oh, well. All right. Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Thursday, February 29th, and I'm calling the Lunenburg Finance Committee meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link below. Please use the link below to join the public meeting webinar. It's attached on the agenda and can be found on the town website. From a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter webinar ID 892-2688-7485. If you have not registered with Zoom, you'll be asked for your name and an email address. This agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any announcements from the committee this evening? The only announcement that I would make is, well, I'll do it during public comment. Is there any public comment from the committee? Any public comment from the public?
Ron Delicio, 181 Reservoir Road. I just wanted to comment that I came very close to filing an open meeting law violation complaint against the chair as a result of the meeting last week. I decide which board and committee meetings to attend based on the agenda items posted for each meeting. From my perspective as a member of the public, it was outrageous for the committee to have a 1.5-hour discussion and subsequent vote on an item as impactful to the entire town as an override, and to not have that item posted on the agenda. Additionally, the chair clearly planned and prepared data in advance of the meeting. The chair also revised the agenda at 11:54 a.m. that day and did not add the override item at that time. These factors make it impossible for me to believe the discussion and vote was not reasonably anticipated by the chair. The vice chair correctly questioned the discussion and vote and requested to postpone the item. If these items were posted on the agenda as required, I would have attended and made a public comment at the beginning of the meeting. What I would have stated is that the taxpayers in this town still do not know the specific dollar amount of their taxes that are due for FY24. How can we be expected to make an informed decision on an additional increase for FY25? I would have also requested a breakdown of the impact to individual taxpayers in terms of a dollar amount. I was glad that one member requested this information, and I would take it one step further and also include the impacts for debt exclusions for the building renovation projects the town already plans to move forward with. We already know Turkey Hill needs at least $13.5 million in upgrades. The current proposal for the Ritter is estimated at $5.5 million, and the Town Hall is estimated at $3.5 million. These projects will most likely require debt exclusions. What kind of increase in our tax bills can we expect from the combination of a budget override that you haven't even, no one has a number for, and the debt exclusions that are estimates needed for future projects? I just was really disappointed that all these items, I think these items need to be paid attention to. The details do matter. I like to plan my personal budget based on numbers. I need some numbers here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment from the public? All right. Hearing none. Do we have a finance director report for this evening? Anything specific?
I do not have anything.
Perfect. Move right into our first presentation then. From the IT department.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Casey Chisholm. Thank you all for being here to go over the IT budget for FY25.
Working on it.
Okay.
There we go.
So I'd just like to start by going over the team that is serving the town of Lunenburg. So it includes myself. I am the IT director through Suzer IT for the town of Lunenburg. We have Dan Nadareski, who is the help desk and network on-site technician. He handles a lot of the day-to-day tasks that come through the help desk. We have Kara McCarthy, the IT admin assistant, who is responsible for internal, external communication on social media and the website, as well as invoicing for the department. And then we have Suzer IT Shared Services, which includes a variety of services, network and security, the work mostly on the back-end tasks that most people don't see them on a day-to-day basis. Virtual Office, which is a live person to get assistance when needed. Project Manager to help with any projects going on in the town to keep them on track. And then Procurement Specialist to make sure that the town is getting the best prices for the devices that they're purchasing. So on to the next slide, going through the FY24 completed initiatives, which was quite a bit this year. We are excited about everything we were able to accomplish. We started with the internet service upgrade in the town hall, was moved over to a fiber connection, which does allow for a more stable and reliable connection into the town and offers us to support more tech advanced solutions such as a VoIP phone system. We added a technical support position. Kara McCarthy, who I referred to previously, she manages the town website. She was instrumental in getting the launch of the new website and working with that vendor for the content and continuing to work with department heads to manage everything that's going on there, along with social media and the invoicing process for the department. Excuse me. The new website was launched in October. It is, I'm sure you have all been on it, it's a much cleaner and friendlier experience and easier to maneuver, not only for the citizens of the town, but also on the back end for the people who are maintaining it and managing it. Then we have the Munis migration, which was a much needed and necessary move by Tyler Technologies that was required of the town to move. It was a huge uplift and a version upgrade. We were 11 years behind where we needed to be, so this was a very large task. With every large task like that, there are hiccups that comes along, which are the responsibility. So the majority of the time of Tyler Technologies, we're working in collaboration and helping push them along to help us resolve the issues at hand. Most of those hiccups have been resolved. There's some smaller things that we're still working with Tyler Technologies on. But with that upgrade, we were able to eliminate some out-of-date servers that the town no longer needed and were posing disruptions on a regular basis throughout the day. We're also able to now utilize some features that Tyler Technologies offers with a new version upgrade that will increase some efficiencies in terms of document storage and employee use of the program. On the next slide, we have our hardware maintenance initiatives that were completed. So as I mentioned, we completed the phone upgrade. This was a phased approach, so all phones in all buildings, with the exception of public safety, got replaced this past year. Was a large upgrade as well, and did add benefits and features into the system that we didn't have previously, and also on the back end, reduce the systems that we have to manage down from 4 to 2. We had the computer upgrades, which is, you're going to continue to see this in here. We're on a regular replacement cycle now for computer upgrades, so every year we have a planned schedule for what devices get replaced, so we're not hitting aged and failing equipment. And then we have the public safety camera upgrade, also another large, much-needed upgrade to a failing system. The equipment was just not up to par anymore. We were spending a lot of time and resources, the IT department as well as the police department, trying to manage and maintain that system. So we're excited to move on to this new system. It's more reliable, offers more consistency, and I will give credit to the police department, not just because they're here, but they have also really taken well to adopting the new system and learning all the features that are available and that can benefit them as a department. So moving forward on to the next slide and looking at our FY25 initiatives for the department are less than we had last year. The software maintenance, as usual, inflation of contractual increases onto the softwares that we do already pay for, that the vendors are putting onto the town. And then the town is looking to invest in workstation backup and EDR, endpoint detection for all workstations within the town. It's required by the town's insurance, but it's also just best industry standard practice to be having that as a resource. Hardware maintenance, again, maintaining that replacement cycle to make sure we don't have failing devices within the town. The public safety, we're looking to finish that project of that second phase and get the new phone system into the public safety complex, increasing the features that they will have available, but also it will make them E911 compliant, which is a requirement of the state. And then we are looking to increase the hours and roles and responsibilities of the admin assistant for the department to offer additional support and communication, as well as taking on some of the less technical issues that are coming across the help desk. And that is all I had, so if there are any questions, I'm all ears.
Open it up to the committee.
So I guess I'll have one question for you is, you are deploying a lot of like new systems, like the Office 360, the phones, et cetera. How's training been for individuals to actually learn the capabilities that are there, maybe adopt them and kind of make everything, more powerful?
Yep. So training, when we moved over to Office 365, probably 2 years ago now, we did an initial training prior to the migration. And then a year after that, we did a follow-up training for all the departments for that migration as well. So we do tend to do training before migrations and then follow-up training. So we have done at least 2 town-wide trainings for the migration for that particular project. And then as people have questions, we do individual trainings as needed. For things like the phone system, that was more of a hands-on approach, less town-wide training. So that was, as people had additional questions, we would meet with them individually. The vendor also provided pamphlets and brochures, documentation on that phone system, so people could look at that as they had time.
Have you deployed it into like the clerk's office?
The phone system?
No,
Or
the
Office 365?
office.
It has been deployed. We are continuing to work on them, with them on making sure they're, we're working on continued training with the clerk's office. Because they do have Office 365 deployed in that office, but they're still using some older file shares on the server.
Yeah, it seems like there could be some workflows established for like posting agendas, minutes, et cetera. It seems to still be kind of an email. Everyone probably does it a little differently kind of system, but
And I do know that Kara has been working with them specifically on posting agendas and whatnot. So that has been something that she has been working on, particularly in that department.
yeah, because even like minutes, once we approve minutes, there's no reason it shouldn't almost instantly be deployed to the,
I have to send them. That's probably your,
Yeah, on time.
well, that's, yeah, but there's still a lot of missing minutes on our website, and I know that we've passed them.
Right.
I've kind of pointed out where they are in our own SharePoints.
And that, the website, if there's things on SharePoint that you feel are missing, if you can send me a direct email, I will dive into that. Kara has been managing all the website minutes, so anything that's missing there, if you bring that to her attention as well as mine, we can work on that together to
Okay.
accomplish that
Yeah, again, just if we could standardize it, maybe then everyone's doing it in a similar
in
way.
the same way.
And we're not dropping things. And then you have a couple capital projects, right?
Yes.
Cameras,
Cameras for the library. They are currently on 2 different systems as is. One of them is extremely old and failing, and one of them is older and will be not usable within the next few years. So we are looking at getting that upgraded to match the system that is at public safety, so we can have one ubiquitous system across the town. But pending budget, it may be a different system that goes into that than what's at public safety.
okay. And then I guess one other question related to the voice over IP. Last night at the school committee meeting, they mentioned that their phone costs went up because they're not sharing it with the town. Is that just a matter like we no longer have phone bills and
Yes.
they still are on that?
Yep. So when we moved over to voice over IP, all of the existing phone lines that were with our phone carrier got moved off of that, and the school side is still on that existing carrier. So all of our lines got removed from that bill. For the most part, the majority of the town's lines are on the voice over IP vendor bill. The existing bill from the old phones was something that was shared between the school and the town, but now that we're no longer on that system, that the school is maintaining that bill mainly by their own budget.
And I'd imagine there's a net reduction in cost going that way?
Yes.
Do you know if anyone's talked to the schools about potentially doing that, or are there any barriers to them being able?
I do believe they have plans on upgrading their entire phone system. I can't speak to the particulars of it or the time frame around that.
Okay.
But I do know that the last time I spoke with the school around their phone system, maybe about a year ago, they did have plans to upgrade that to a voice over IP system as well.
Okay.
The only question I have, and you covered it a little bit in what you've guys have been doing over the past year and what's coming up ahead, is the sizable increase in technical support. I have thoughts in my head as to what's driving that. I'd just like to hear your comments.
In terms of the people who are supporting, or which?
There's a technical support line here that's gone up 74.27% for this.
For the IT
budget.
admin assistant? Is that for the IT admin assistant
It doesn't
position?
break it down
Okay.
that much.
it's in the personnel line, so it
Okay,
seems.
yep, so that's for the IT admin assistant's position increase, and that, unfortunately, the town manager is not here to also speak on that, but that was also an initiative that she wanted to push as well, or not push, but encourage, in terms of helping the department have quicker response times and help with the communication internally and externally throughout the town to make sure there's alignment. And again, help with some of the less technical things that are coming through the help desk that can be supported by someone like Kara in the IT admin position.
Got two more things. Scuttlebutt with people that I talk with on a regular basis is that connection to the cloud has been non-existent for some buildings, non-functional, and it's causing them to have to recreate documents because they don't get saved, so on and so forth. Again, I only know one side of the story, so I'm just passing it on.
I will have to dig into that more. I haven't seen too many requests coming through, excuse me, in regards to recreating documents. So I will dive into that and figure out if there's particular departments that's affecting more than others. And it might be a training. It might be a training piece. It might be a license piece when it comes to Office 365. So that's something that we will dive more into.
Right. But one other thing that would be very helpful, and I don't know if it's doable, but because minutes are so slow to get approved and posted up on the website to get access for information about past meetings, is there any possible way of including a link to the YouTube videos that are posted for probably 80% of our meetings? I tried to do some research on a particular committee over the past 4 or 5 days, and it was really difficult because minutes aren't posted yet. And then I had to go to the PAC website and see if I could find the right video, so on and so forth.
I think that aligns a little bit with what you were saying as well, and kind of having a more a better process almost of getting everything on the website and approved. So I think I will look into that and take that feedback and see if we can just build a better process to have things uploaded onto the website. So I can work with the team on that.
Great, thank you.
Because I even think like agendas can be posted, they don't have to be printed, I don't think. I think they can be posted on a, like a TV or something. So it just seems like we're running like it's 1960 or something, and
A little behind the times for.
maybe a little, yeah.
Okay, I'll get with the team and we'll see what we can do to increase that efficiency
Okay.
there to get those posted faster.
Yeah, because it's hard, I mean, especially for meetings like this, people kind of plan for 4-hour meetings on a Thursday. So,
What's that?
yeah.
For the technical support position, is that already a benefited position at this point?
It is not, so it would be increased to a benefit position.
So are those costs reflected in here as well?
Yes.
So that part of that 74% includes the
It includes the increase onto.
$25,000?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, okay. How many more hours are we talking about?
I believe she's at 16 and we would increase her to 32.
Okay.
Is the goal.
So we're back to that
Is
one
that
again.
full-time?
That's full-time.
32 hours is full-time, right?
I believe so.
Or is it
I would have to-
36?
Well,
We're on a 4-day
It
week.
counts as eligible for benefits.
I mean, it's
40 hours is
over 20.
full-time, but
In the
Over-
town it is?
I don't know, when it comes to admin, someone with 36 or someone with 37.5, it's
Right.
weird.
But it would make that position eligible for all of the benefits that full-time people have access to.
So that gets back to the same question we had for the Council on Aging about if we're taking $22,000 out of that increase. I mean, that's effectively, that $18,000 increase is effectively entirely based on the overhead of health insurance at this point. So is she even going to see a net increase in her salary? And does it make sense to move to a full-time position from a cost perspective, not a time perspective, but from a cost perspective?
Right. That is a great question. In terms of what she would be accepting for benefits, I obviously can't comment on that. So I don't know what she would actually see in that breakdown, but it's something that I can gather some more information with her and Heather and come back to you with an answer.
We get back to does it make more sense to have a second or part-time position that would be less overhead on the cost and still potentially accumulate the same number of hours per week, plus get off-cycle schedules?
One subtle difference on this one, though, is that this is going to like almost full-time, or full-time.
That's true.
The other one was like, let's just inch across the threshold into,
But this increase is less than that increase was, which that also doesn't make sense to me.
Do you know if you chose a middle-of-the-road cost for the benefits?
I do not know, I'm sorry.
The overall increase is only $18,200, which what we were seeing at the council was a $6,000 increase in pay and a $22,000 increase on health insurance
yeah, but the
benefits.
22,000, or in the benefits associated with this would be in a different line item. It wouldn't be in,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. The benefits shouldn't even be in that line
Right.
item.
And that
could
is
be
something I'd
different
have to
steps.
confer with
I
Heather
don't know what
with.
the step of the positions are, but.
That's true.
Traditionally, that's all separated out for all town
All town,
employees.
okay. Yeah, I would have to confer with Heather on that piece. She manages most of that for the personnel
Okay.
for the town side that Suzer doesn't manage.
I would be curious if that 74% increase is strictly salary or if it's everything included.
It's pretty easy to get to that percentage point with as low as it was.
It's true.
And as you guys were saying, it's a little bit easier to swallow when you're going up to a full-time or almost 40-hour week
Right.
versus jumping up 1 or 2 hours and having that expense.
You're
I
doubling.
think Tom came up with, what, $95 an hour,
Yes.
jumping up to, by only a couple of hours of actual work time.
For for the hardware maintenance, the roughly 30, I think it's 29,000 on this, on
Yeah,
here.
it's a little less than
Okay.
30, I believe.
What percentage of the town's assets does that actually replace?
So it's typically around 10% depending on the cost of the devices that year.
Right.
Fortunately, we've seen them kind of flatten out in the past 2 years. They spiked up pretty significantly, but in the past 6 months, we've seen them flatten out, so we're able to get more devices for the budgeted. But we try and aim for about 10% of the fleet.
Okay. So if we follow from FY '23, that line was at 42,500. FY '24, it was at 70,500. Then it went down for the target, stayed down for the requested, and then went back up again. Can you kind of walk us through
So
why we're all over the place with
The
this?
74 was including network equipment. So that's why that jumped, because that's not only, typically in that line, why it stayed now is it's for maintaining the laptops and desktops in people's hands. The network equipment is outside of that. And then the past 2 years, now that we've been in this replacement cycle for a few years, we have a better understanding of what is needed to actually replace a portion of the devices throughout the town on a 5-year cycle.
Okay, okay. The internet access, is that, are we in a contract for that?
It's a 3-year contract.
When does that end?
For the fiber for this building, just went active in 2023, so 2026.
So we'll be looking at next year's budget for a potential increase in that one. Okay. I think that was all of the questions that I had. Yes, okay. Mr. Gray, you've been here for 10 seconds. Do you have any questions?
Any IT question? I'm guessing not.
All set?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
evening, Chief. Good evening. So I have all 7 of them open, just in case. Do you have do you want to just start right into the actual presentation, or do you want to go through any of the documents that you dropped?
Why don't we go through the presentation, and
Sure.
then those documents are actually attached to the presentation, so if you have questions or whatever it may be. I'll leave it up to the board to decide whether you want to ask me questions as we're going through this like we did last year, or can wait till the end. I know this one can be pretty long, so I will leave it entirely up to you. Please don't hesitate to ask at any time during this presentation.
Thank you.
And whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go. First of all, thank you for having us tonight to present this budget presentation to the committee. I need to thank the town manager for her assistance through this process also. I know she's not here tonight, but I'm sure she'll watch us after I'm done, especially to give me critiques. With me tonight is my Lieutenant Jeffrey Thibodeau, and Amanda Moore, who's my admin assistant. I have to thank Amanda tremendously for the work that was put into this. I think I said this last year, that we would probably be up here for 3 minutes if I had to do this all myself. And the tremendous amount of work that goes into this is incredible. With that, just to, 2023 was a challenging year for us, especially with, I think Chris and I spoke last year at this meeting about the growth of the town, what our projections were, and the master plan was kind of saying that the growth wasn't as expected as what we thought. And I said, I really don't see that. And we've seen growth in town along with, population growth, with traffic growth, and issues that we had to deal with that. Recruiting and retention for law enforcement, for policing around the country is still a challenge. Right now, I'm probably going to jinx myself that we've kind of stabilized in that area where we have a recruit in the academy right now that'll put us up to 20 officers sworn. And again, that'll probably jinx what I have in progress here. But realizing that also, that the challenges that we faced, the department has been committed to proactive policing within our community, to concept of community policing. Our officers are out there every day and fighting the good fight out there. Next slide, please.
Sorry, go back one.
I just want to, we lost somebody that was very dear to us last year, and I just want to make sure that we acknowledge Lieutenant Stan Barney, who was a member of our police department for over 30 years, starting back in the 70s. I got to know Stan very well when I first came to Lunenburg as a football coach back in 1995, and I got to know him throughout the years. He was an integral part of this police department, as well as a pillar in this community. We lost somebody that was just extraordinary and who was committed to this town. He volunteered for a lot of different community events. He was on the committee, the celebration coming up, and he had a love for this community, which could be seen every time you talk to him. And he's going to be sorely missed, and I want to make sure we acknowledge that.
Thank you.
You can go to the next slide. Those are some just shameless plugs again with pictures that Chris loves, so I want to make sure we get those in there. Our department photos, just some events that have occurred throughout the year that we have. Some great pictures of a new K-9 to make sure that there's another shameless plug in there, so we can get that. Next slide, please. This is our organizational chart. Just to be brief about this, we work 24/7, nights, weekends, and holidays. We're out there all the time. Current staffing is 20 full-time officers. We have myself, the lieutenant, 4 sergeants, 11 patrol officers, 1 detective, 1 SRO, and 1 recruit officer. On the civilian side, we have a public safety coordinator. We have a public safety desk clerk who works the desk Monday through Friday, and a part-time admin assistant. Also within that org chart, you're going to see a civilian traffic unit. They work on a per diem basis, and it's paid through private companies that hire them on the site. Currently, our department is split into 2 divisions, the administrative division and the operations division. Within those divisions, we break them up into bureaus. Within the administrative division is the admin bureau. That consists of myself, the lieutenant, and our civilian personnel. Basically responsible for the overall management of the police department. Under the operations divisions, we break them up into bureaus such as the Patrol Bureau, Traffic Bureau, Investigative Bureau, Community Policing Bureau, or Community Outreach Bureau. Each one of them is staffed. The Patrol Division is staffed by supervision with sergeants. Currently, we don't have supervision in the Investigative Bureau or the Community Policing Bureau at this time. If you look at that organizational chart also, it includes a 10-year plan, where the vacancies are and where we plan to put those officers as we hire. One of the things I probably say every year, and you hear me say it every year, we always examine where we're at and where we're looking to go to, review everything that we do, and how to best fit our organization and how to best fit and place officers where we feel it's needed. When I presented last year, the plan was to, as we got a new hire, we were going to put somebody else in a detective position where we would have seen 2 detectives. As the year passed, we went through the last year. I've seen some critical incidents that have occurred over time, and we felt that it was better served if we promoted the lieutenant to that position. And I'll get into that as we get into the meat of the budget presentation. But when we looked at this organization, we felt that the lieutenant would have been better served for our department, for the community, and what we need. Next slide. So as always, we throw our performance measures is based on numbers. We evaluate how we're doing, not strictly on numbers, but it's probably the best way we can see how effective we are. That top line, if you look at that top line, it broke it down into the last 4 years. Since I've been the chief, it's amazing that I've been here for 4 years doing this. But what we look at as the overall calls. We're pretty busy for a town our size and for a department our size. We're at 23,000 calls for last year for the entire year. It's down a little bit, but some of that can be attributed to calls for service are down, but also proactive policing. Patrols are out there on a regular basis. We're fully staffing our patrol division. They're out there, visible, making stops. They're in the neighborhoods, and that really does lead to reduction in crime.
Those are calendar years, right?
Excuse me?
Calendar years, not...
Calendar years. Fiscal years is hard for us because
Yeah.
the way the RM system works, it's just the way we have to
Yeah,
close it out.
fine.
Is there a balance that you're looking to get to with number of officers, number of patrol out on the street, and then calls? Is it?
Yeah, I think the ideal balance is 0 crime, but I mean, that's utopia.
When everyone's a police officer?
Honestly, our goal is to provide a safe community, the safest community we can. Unfortunately, we have crime. I mean, that's just the matter of life. But the balance is to have enough patrol officers to handle day-to-day calls on the street safely. And one of the examples I was thinking of when we were reviewing this is when I started, we had 2 patrols that night. And if I was on the east side of town and there's a fight breaking out on the lakefront, it takes a while to get there. And it's not safe for the community, it's not safe for those officers, and we had to make a decision to make sure that we staff that patrol staff effectively. Some of the arrests are down. We're down to 322 arrests this year, which again, I think a lot of that has to do with the calls of service are down. But also you can see that years fluctuate also. There's years that we've had 400, and we've had years that we've had 600 arrests, and it just ebbs and flows as we see it. Next slide, please. Motor vehicle accidents have been reduced, which is a good sign. Injuries have reduced also, which we're very fortunate to see that. One of the things I want you to note is under motor vehicle stops, the OUI arrests have increased. That's a little concerning. Obviously, when we look for that balance that we talk about, we want to see that number at 0. We want people to be responsible, but obviously, we can't predict what's going to happen there, but it is notable that it's at that level. Next slide, please. So on the budget narrative that I sent you, there was a typo. It should be 122 like it's on the slide. On the narrative, for some reason, my typing wasn't that good there. We responded to 122 domestic violence incidents. That is the overall number that we responded. Not all of them resulted in the categories you see below, but it's a little concerning that those numbers are on the rise. In the budget narrative I sent you, I noted that crime and violence has decreased in our community, which is what we want to see. But when I see these numbers of domestic violence, it's concerning. There's an issue there that we really need to address. The restraining order issues is a big issue. When we're at that point, the numbers in the 50s is pretty high for the size of our community. The animal calls that just keeps increasing every year. We're at 256. The good thing, the dog bites are down below 10. We've seen, some drops in that, but our ratio is very busy, and it's constant.
With respect to like the domestic violence, are you able to attribute like the why? And then is there anything that can be done?
That's a tough question. Societal issues, dealing with domestic violence, those are tough things to predict, especially when you're dealing with emotions and high emotions, alcohol, drugs, the substance abuse part of it, mental health issues that go with this. Those are really unpredictable, and it's hard. We have people dedicated to domestic violence follow-ups. We have people that are assigned to the high-risk domestic violence team. That when we see something that's really major, we'll start intervening and make sure. And I shouldn't say we start intervening, but it's a process where we're able to get information out to other communities also about these type of suspects. So there's awareness out there.
Is it possible that we're just seeing sort of a COVID dip as a response? I mean, it tracks at least with a quarter of the way through 2020 through most of 2022 and then kind of rising back up to where it was.
It could be, that's a big possibility. But I think I sat here a couple of years ago and I'm sitting there going, COVID was, I would have thought those issues would have went through the roof.
Yep.
People aren't meant to be together 24 hours a day and just stick them in isolation. I'm just sitting there going, wow, this could be really.
Yep.
But I mean, again, with domestic violence, it's very unpredictable. We try to keep an eye on situations that evolve, and it's one of those things. The emotions are so high. And again, when we start talking about, you start involving, mental health issues, or you start substance abuse, now those things just tend to explode. Anything else? Next slide. So one of the things, and I came before you last year about a opioid response program that we're looking at, or co-response for mental health issues, and we asked for money from the opioid relief funds to deal with this. And the numbers here, we're dealing with at least 60 mental health issues that we've seen last year. Some of the concerning numbers are the Section 12s, which usually that's when we're putting somebody in a hospital. It's a non-voluntary issue in that we're placing them there. We're seeing that they're either a risk to themselves or a risk to the public, and we have to make sure that we get them services and get them help. One of the things that I noted in this slide was at number 44 for associated calls and arrests. I didn't have that number when I did the budget narrative for you, but this is when an officer makes an arrest, an in-custody arrest, and there's some type of mental health issue going on there. And we started tracking that last year to see where this is, or where we're at with this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about getting a co-response program in this community. Here are some of those typical numbers. This doesn't even equate to all the substance abuse that we're dealing with also that are associated with calls. Because we're looking at a co-response that deals with not only mental health, but we're dealing with substance abuse issues also. We're meeting with Open Sky in Lancaster next month. We're about to sign an MOU. And we got some great news today that we're in the queue for a grant. So hopefully within the next few weeks, we'll find out how much money we get. One of the things that I want to assure is that if we start this program, it's got to be successful, and we have to find this funding source to continue the program. I wouldn't be comfortable with starting this program and not having a funding source down the road. And one of the things that I stressed to Officer McNamara when we started looking at this program, I says, if that grant doesn't come through, we're going to take another look at what we're doing and make sure that we're going down the right path. Firearms licensing, those are, anybody that applies for a license to carry or renew their license to carry within our community. The number's a little high last year, and I would say that I think you're going to see a spike this year again. It's an election year. Typically, we see spikes in election years. There is a Senate and House bill in the state about gun control, so we're probably going to see some fallout from that with people panicking and trying to get their LTCs before these bills pass. That's typically how we see these things, especially with the unknowns with the presidential election. That's usually when we see these increasing numbers. Before we go on to the next slide, just a couple notes that we have seen a decrease in crime of violence. Unfortunately, for the first time in over 20-something years, we had to deal with a murder back in December. And again, that's directly related to domestic violence and substance abuse issues also. We have seen a 41% increase in crimes against society. I directly attribute that to our work our detective's doing. He's assigned to a drug task force and proactively in drug enforcement. So don't be thinking that number's, we've got this huge problem that, we're selling drugs in the street here, but it's a lot of proactive work, and I want to make sure that that's out there, and he's doing a great job. Any questions on performance?
Are the trends that you see kind of statewide trends, or do they not follow?
Without doing an empirical study, I wouldn't be comfortable answering that. With the communities around us, we're partnering with Lancaster for the mental health. I can say those trends are typical for our two communities, and it's a partnership that we felt that would work really well with us. We couldn't partner with a city like Fitchburg or Leominster. They would just overwhelm us because those type of calls are just through the roof. Leominster's been running their co-response program for about a year now, and pretty successful. So we're hoping to follow in that same lead. Anything else on? All right. So, as I state, every year we always review our budget. We meet monthly, on a monthly basis. When the lieutenant has time, he tries to sit on these budget reviews, and we take a look at, our historical budget. We look at where we're coming up short, where we're having surpluses. An example of this is the FY23 budget as expended. Pretty self-explanatory straight across. These things, when we start developing budgets, these things are based on the CBA, our current and future needs that we look at. And again, we look at a 5-year review to make sure that we are doing what we need to be responsible for when we're looking at these budgets. A part of that review is the 10-year hiring plan that we're hoping to resume this year, and that's been supported by the town manager. Part of that process is looking at our staffing levels based on several different things. I don't want to say that it's just based on the population ratio, because that's an unfair ratio to look at. Some communities may not need that based on their population, right? You have to look at other avenues. Besides the population, you have to look at the size of your community, how big the community is as in area-wise, travel times to get to other officers, to get to other parts of the town, workloads. We have to look at what type of workload are we putting on our officers. When we look at 23,000 calls for service, and we look at the patrol level handling those type of calls and what their workload is that, and that's how we get to the ratio of staffing. Currently, we're approximately 1.5 officers per 1,000, based on our community side. The statewide average is 2.4. And again, that's not indicative of what's recommended. It's based on your community and what you need and what our needs are. But it's nice to know what is out there. That number is reduced, by the way, and part of that is because of the retention part of this profession. We're having difficulties keeping police officers in this profession. And it's a lot of things that are going around in this country. We're not immune to it. At one time, I believe that number used to be like 3.5 statewide per 1,000. There's a lot of issues nationally that affect us locally, and it really does affect how we retain officers. Before I go to the next slide, is there any questions on the FY23 as expended? It's pretty straightforward. I'll explain the surplus on the next slide and what we can attribute to some of those surpluses are. Okay, next slide. So one of the surpluses that we had that had occurred with our budget was due to a retirement. We lost an officer to the state police, which again, I can't compete with that. It's very difficult. We've had the ability to send detainees to Worcester House of Correction, which has reduced our lockup. And also, we've been able to backfill those positions at a later time at a lower rate. So that's where we anticipated those surpluses in salary lines. The expense lines was conservative. It was conservative spending. This is my second go at a budget that's in some troubling times that we're all aware of. So last year we reduced some of our lines to accommodate the town manager's needs for other priorities within the town that we recognized that we were able to get by that year without really impacting our budget hugely. And one of them was a lockup surplus, and the other one was spending conservatively on maybe it was vehicle maintenance or maybe it was some type of supply line that we could say, okay, we can put this off for a year. Questions on that? Okay. Again, we meet monthly to discuss our budget, to see where we're at, where we're going, and if we can predict any type of shortfalls or surpluses. As of the 24th of January, when this last budget we ran and last time we met, we're pretty much on par of where we should be. We are anticipating another surplus in our salary line. That is due to that still retirement that we've seen this past summer. And from that officer that had gone to the state police, we backfilled those positions, but it didn't happen until December and November respectively. So we're seeing those months carry over that we didn't spend that money. So we're anticipating a surplus in those areas. One of the reasons that I asked, and we'll get to that slide, but one of the reasons I asked for a half-year hire is it takes us a while to hire people. There's a huge vetting process that we have to go through, and it's not something I'm going to interview you, you're good, I'll take you. We go through a full background investigation on every person that's hired by the department. Any sworn police officer, excuse me, has to go through a psychological exam, a physical exam, has to pass the requirements of post before we even get them into the academy. So it takes that long period of time to vet that person out. And you'll see that in that slide. That is one of the reasons why we back off from saying, okay, we'd like to hire a person July 1st. We just never realized that. And to be quite honest, to be fiscally responsible, we're like, yeah, let's hold off for a half year and go with that route. Is there any questions on that? So the next slide, this is a overview of our budget for FY25. I'm going to note right up front the discrepancy in the increase. It was noted that we have a 5.94% increase. That is not entirely true. It's 2.87 by our calculations. And one of the reasons was on the personnel line, on the salary line for patrol officers, the CBA wasn't accounted for in that target budget or in ClearGov. When you add that CBA, that we have to, I mean, we're obligated to do that, then you take our overall budget, we're at 2.87%. So I don't want the understanding or the misunderstanding out there that we're asking for a 5.94% increase in our budget. That's not entirely true. Our target budget is right at 2.87 with that increase that we're requesting. As we go on the slides, you'll see how this works out and where it's salary heavy. And that's probably typical for any municipal department in the Commonwealth or around the country. Is there any questions on that overview?
Nothing yet.
Okay. So pie charts, I heard the last meeting you guys love pie charts, so we threw a pie chart in there for you.
Are we just like pie?
Just like pie, yeah, you know, there'd be like a breakfast table over here, or a dessert table. As you can see, we broke it out, and our personnel accounts for 83% of our expenses. And then it breaks it down to percentages each step of the way. Regional dispatch, that 7% cost too, that is public safety, that's just not on my budget. That should show up in the fire department budget too, so it's an overall emergency operations center for us. Next slide. So again, pie chart, just to break down a little bit further of our police salaries and our personnel. Salaries account for, of that 83% of those expenses, our salaries itself account for 73% of it. The incentives are at 10%. These are covered by all contracts, CBA agreements, and overtime and training.
What's included in the incentives?
We are going to go right through every one of them.
Fantastic.
Before you go on to the next,
Sure.
is there a way to get the overtime down?
Yes and no. That's a tough one because we're obligated to cover shifts and fill overtime shifts. And as we go on to these slides and we show you how we break these down, it's by obligation and by contract. And I look at it as what is the safest amount of people we can have out there. That's how we look at overtime. Overtime is broken up into several different categories. As we go on in the slides, you'll see how these are broken down and adjusted or allocated.
Chief, there was a shift too on the overtime, because I can remember Chief Marino mentioning that in the collective bargaining agreements they had back a few years ago, when you had reserve officers, there was some backfill with reserves instead of overtime.
Yes, absolutely. As a result of post, that's where you start to see a lot of reserve officers have left the profession.
Yep.
It's very difficult to hire a reserve who's at the level of a full-time officer and say, we'll pay you part-time work, come work part-time and do this profession. Yeah, that's a tough sell. You'll see that our reserves have a professional life outside the police department. A couple firefighters out there, somebody who works for an auto dealership, stuff like that. They have professional lives. One of them also works for Worcester County Sheriffs. So it's a way to just keep giving back and stay involved. And that does play a factor in it, but it also is the number of shifts we have to. Next slide, please. You like those slides, don't you? Make her envious, and that's an IT person. So straightforward is our salary breakdown. FY25, when it says updated, that accounts for the increases in the CBA already beyond the target. That lieutenant's position includes the updated request for the half-year position. The sergeants are straightforward. Their salary, based on the 4 sergeants we have, the 1 detective we have. The patrol officers, the difference there is that 938 is what the target should be. That's according to the CBA and what that raise they got that this upcoming fiscal year. The reason why you see it less in that updated is once we hire promote, we're hiring at a lower rate. So that person would come in at a step 1 compared to a step 5 patrol officer. Public safety coordinator, that includes the CBA raise that was in there. That huge 106.94% increase in the part-time admin assistant, we are not paying $99 an hour for that person. It is not that. We made a mistake when we did our budget. We forgot to include the full-year salary. We hired her at a half year and forgot to include that in the next year budget to increase that. We've had to make internal transfers to accommodate for that this year. That's on me. We missed that when we were going through haven't had a part-time person since 2000, and to go through that process again, it was like, we forgot that. So that's what that is accounting for. So it's not that huge increase that you see.
She's still at 16 hours.
Yeah, still at 16 hours, but it's a full year of 16 hours a week.
Going back to the lieutenant position,
Sure.
I understand the fiscally responsible action of doing a half salary. The part that I always struggle with the half salary is it's a way of sort of decreasing the overall salary line while still getting the salary essentially set up for the next year.
Correct.
So while it's a 54% increase to the FY25 budget, it's not actually a 54% increase to the salary line overall, right? Because it's going to eventually hit us.
Correct.
Because we have to pay the person for the
Correct.
other half of their year, starting in FY25.
Correct. And if you look at the documents that I gave you, we don't hide that.
Of course.
That is, we are transparent about that, and we're pretty clear that our plan is to keep that person moving forward. We project out 10 years. Our hiring plan has been broken down into those documents, and we project out 10 years. And we've tried to make those documents as ready, available to anybody that wants to see them. So yes, is it a half year this year and a full year next year? That was our intention the entire time. And that's a part of the 10-year plan. And to be honest, we wouldn't want to hire 10 people at once and then just absolutely crush the budget. I mean, that's not responsible either. But we know where we need to be, and that staffing level's been important. That's why that plan was put in place. For 20 years that I've been here, we were so short-staffed that we finally, developed a plan that would get us to the level where we need to be.
Does that, so in doing it this way, does that constrain your expense lines at all for the next fiscal year that's coming up? Because you're going to have another $50,000 hit in the salary immediately, so it's going to decrease what you can actually pull on the expense line potentially.
Yes, and possibly.
Okay.
But I think
Has it happened over the course of the 10-year
correct,
staffing plan so far?
and I think that's an evaluation process that we have to look at every year. We look at what our expense lines are for supplies or whatever it may be every year anyways. Some of them, I think you probably had an opportunity to look at those documents. Some of them are level funded because we see that we don't need it. Some years they may not be, and I can tell you before we even get there, the firearms expenses are going through the roof. I just pulled out a couple invoices today, and not to spoil it, but there's a 140% increase on one platform alone.
Wow.
That's incredible. And then I'm being told by my firearms instructors, if we don't start ordering now, we're looking at a 6-month wait. And I can't do that, not with the training levels and what we have to accomplish. So yes, do we have to evaluate that? Absolutely. Does that mean we decrease somewhere to put it somewhere else? And we just have to make those evaluations to make it work. And it's an ongoing process. This is why we meet on a monthly basis to discuss this and to make sure that we're doing the right things. And knock on wood, in the 4 years that I've been here, I don't think we've ever asked for a salary transfer, an expense transfer outside of our budget. And I think we've been trying to manage pretty well. And it's great that you asked that. It leads me into why we're hiring that person. And one of the reasons I brought Lieutenant Thibodeau here too is honestly to give you a little more insight of what we actually do and what the lieutenant actually does. Let me break this down a little bit and talk about the reallocation of funds and how we got to this point. Again, I have to say that I need that command staff presence on that shift. Unfortunately, we did deal with that murder. And not that it's a sign of the times, but we've had critical incidences that happen outside, normal business hours. By having a command staff member working through to 11, I don't have to call him in at 8:30 at night and say goodbye to your family, you're staying with me until 5 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning. I have a command staff person that's on site, so he's able to handle those critical incidences where it allows our detective, our patrol officers to handle the scene. Those critical incidences require a lot of logistics. I can tell you, we were here probably till 5 in the morning and back in at 7. And it's just the nature of the beast that we have to deal with those issues. So in a sense, I'm paying overtime at lieutenant's rate from 8 o'clock at night till 5 in the morning, right? Where we can you asked about reduction of overtime, this is a possibility of reduction of overtime. It puts a command staff person in that building until 11 o'clock at night. And this is one of the reasons why, when you look at the cost breakdown, we are able to eliminate the desk shift from 3 to 7. We would typically call them a houseman or house person, that they would be in that building unless there's a critical incident that they have to respond to. This would also start our span of control starts becoming a little more tighter. Any organization within policing, or probably a lot of organizations, your span of control shouldn't be this wide, right? Our span of control of our personnel and stuff should be getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so we can actually supervise, guide, and advise, our personnel. And that's what we're looking at, and that's why we find it important to make sure that that lieutenant's in place at that time. Some of the benefits that we can see also is possibly a reduction in that lockup salary. Now that I have somebody in that building all the time, that lieutenant's responsible for booking. He's going to arrange for that transport to Worcester, which maybe I only have to call on one person. Or if I have enough personnel on, 2 people go, we still have 3 in town. So we could see a reduction at that point too. Another added benefit is we're looking at the department our size, movement is very minimal sometimes. When we talk about morale opportunities, this is an opportunity for upward movement. It creates leadership within our department, and it creates movement within the ranks. And that's a huge part of retaining police officers. I'm going to have VLT speak a little bit to what he does on a daily basis and try to give you some insight on this. He's going to probably shoot me when we leave because I'm putting him on the spot.
Hopefully not, it's too
There's
expensive.
a lot that goes with it.
I guess Jeffrey Thibodeau, lieutenant at the police department. Day to day, I describe my job as basically a general manager. You keep the place running. Everything from changing batteries to my real job is the court, all right? That'll probably be attributed to 2 hours in the morning getting all the court stuff ready. Then all discovery, which I was just talking to Casey, we've been able to streamline with some of our new technology actually, where before it was burning DVDs and now we can email, which is reducing 45 minutes out of my day by not sitting there burning DVDs for the court. Each arrest needs 3 DVDs burned. We have a new body camera system, which on average, and when the chief talks about this, 23,000 incidents that every officer goes on, you got to attribute at least 15 minutes for that officer to come in and document with that body camera. So any interaction they have with a person, the body camera's on, they have to come back, categorize that body camera, watch it, download it. So if you think about how much time they're attributing to those 23,000 calls, it's actually, and say 3 to 11 probably has 10, 15 calls a night. Add that up, that officer is sitting at that desk categorizing his calls. Now, if that officer has an arrest or a citation, you're gonna look at citation with the body camera, you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes, that officer has to put that in. An arrest, you're looking at anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours to process that arrest. So you have to attribute those officers' times for that. And we try and do it without overtime. So we try and get it done within that 8-hour block. Now, my job, it could be, like I said, anything from shoveling driveways to
Shameless plug.
to responding to murders, you know? And a second lieutenant, I think to have, in this day and age, where we're expected to get it right 100% of the time, and that's the standard. We have to get it right 100% of the time, every time. To have that added person of a higher level of responsibility and supervisor to watch over that and get it right, I think is huge. Now, the way I attribute it is that the officer goes out there, they do their job, they get it right, and then it's my job to make sure all the boxes are checked, so that him or her did not miss something. And it's not missing something on the street, it's missing something for the paperwork, for the court, for evidence, getting that procedure 100% correct. So when you go into that courtroom and testify, what we're looking for is a guilty, right? And there's no piece of that was broken, which when you go there, if you didn't put down that your piece of evidence got logged in a day later than what it was actually logged in, you can kiss that evidence goodbye. Is it human error? Sometimes. But then it's the supervisor or lieutenant's ability to say, hey, get that evidence logged in correctly. Get that arrest report correctly. Hey, on that citation, you checked off arrest when this is supposed to be a summons. It's just checks and balances at that point, I guess is what I would say. I can go on and on about my job. You can come walk around with me.
We invite you. You can.
I mean, my steps are through the roof.
We can be coffee with the lieutenant now.
Yeah.
You know, on top of that, about getting it right, and he's tasked with a lot of, like, internal affairs. That's an important part of our job. We have to make sure that's done right. Public records access, on top of the records management system, right? He's got to, he's becoming an expert in that, and an expert in body-worn cameras, and an expert in Verkada and how to make sure that we're doing all that right. He is our liaison to the court, but he's also our liaison to the district attorney's office. And that should be within the realm of an administrative lieutenant. As we move forward and we promote that second lieutenant, he thinks his job's going to get a little easier. It's not, because now we start separating operations and start pulling back some of the administrative functions that we put on the supervisors, on our sergeants, and start putting it on the lieutenants. So the supervisors can be out in the street with their people, right? And making sure that those things are done right. The check blocks are done. The reports are done correctly. Everything is categorized. And then the lieutenants are those second eyes that we look at. On top of it, we would assign the investigative bureau, reassign the divisions or the bureaus within those divisions, and have the operations take care of the patrol aspect, right? Take care of the traffic, take care of the prisoners, take some load off of him, so we're not burning out my lieutenant either. The other part of that is these guys are tied to their phones 24 hours a day. And right, wrong, or indifferent, right, that's a part of our job, but it's to lessen that strain also. We have a scheduling software that we use, and he has to answer that when somebody calls in sick or, somebody wants to take a day off. Right now, we're trying to rotate it through the sergeants, but realistically, it should be the two lieutenants that take care of that. Department scheduling, the lieutenant spends painstaking hours when those bids come in twice a year to try to figure out where people want to be and where they want to go. When you're running an organization that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and trying to fit everybody into a slot and make sure that we have proper coverage, it does get daunting. So that's why we're looking at this process here. Other than that, again, we could go on and on and on about this responsibility and where it is.
Is there technology available that would make a lot of that job that you described of checking paperwork and logging and easier and faster?
We absolutely have the technology, but it still requires the human aspect of it. We have a system that we use to make sure that everybody's using their body-worn cameras right. But to audit that, somebody actually go in and audit those systems and make sure it's being done properly. And we have the sergeants do it right now for their shifts, but realistically, the only reason the lieutenant doesn't do it is just because we don't have the time. 23,000 calls, 23,000 incidents, to randomly pick a certain number of incidents and review every bit of that body-worn camera is a lot. So we ask our sergeants to take on that responsibility at this point. But, once we get a second lieutenant, operations, administrative, they can review it and make sure it's done properly.
When you look at your incidents, is it pretty evenly broken through the 3 shifts, or is it, like, which one is the?
3 to 11, busiest shift.
3 to the 11
Yeah,
is the busiest?
absolutely.
Okay.
And I would say that's true for any police organization, as your 3 to 11 shift is typically your busiest shift.
Okay. Not like what's the 11 to 7 like? I mean, I would think in some,
No, it's definitely not at the level of 3 to 11 a days, definitely not. I'd like to say we're a bedroom community, but we're not. We have bars within the town. We border Fitchburg and Leominster, which Leominster has over 50,000 residents. Fitchburg has probably about 47,000 residents. We have Route 2A and 13 that come right through, that go right to both towns. So, at night, there's bars that are traveling around, there's restaurants, cut-throughs to other areas. So, is it quieter? Yes. Is it dead? No. That's just typical. Anything else?
So there would be no front desk coverage. Right now, who actually sits at the front desk?
That is posted out to the reserves.
Okay,
Let me clarify that. 7 to 3, there's a full-time person.
okay,
From 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, there's a full-time person on that desk. From 3 to 7, that is bid out to the reserve officers first. Then it goes to the clerical union within our building because it's part of their CBA. And then it's put out after that, to the patrol.
okay. So that's where the elimination of the desk overtime salaries is coming
Yeah,
from? It's
yep.
that reserve
Yep,
overtime?
yep.
Okay.
I don't know why, that's been labeled like that for 100 years, and if you look at like the Munis system, it continues to be labeled like that. But it's for reserves and for
Okay.
that desk.
Oh, it's not even an overtime, it's just the reserve line?
Separate line item.
Okay,
It is at an overtime rate.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we calculated at an overtime rate.
okay.
Just because we have no idea who's going to be working that. It's not a permanent, like, nobody's assigned to that permanently.
So that's the worst case, that's if the
We
most
look at
senior
worst case,
person
yep,
is,
yep.
okay. Okay.
Any
Any other questions about this? All right.
Next slide. Incentives. All right, here we go. Here's your explanation about incentives. These are based on CBAs. These are obligations that we have based on the contract. So, court officer stipend, the lieutenant, as being a court officer and being a district attorney liaison, there's a stipend in there. Shift differential. That is a tough target for us. Even though we can do a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year average, it's all dependent on what shifts are filled on overtime, what is not, where the officer works. That person may move off a shift, it doesn't have that shift differential. So we call that a moving target because those are one of the ones that fluctuates year after year.
What exactly is a shift differential?
What's the percentage?
Evening shift is 3%.
3%. and
Night shift is 5%.
5%
Okay,
on your salary.
got it.
So
Okay,
if it's a regular shift, if it's a salary, they get 3% on their salaried rate, and anyone that works an overtime shift, it's on their 3% or 5% on their overtime rate.
got it. Okay,
So it's each individual officer, so if we have a newer officer that's at step 1, obviously the shift differential is going to be a lot lower than if we have a sergeant working it. It'd be at their rate.
Okay.
Longevity, there's an actual reduction. We only have 8 officers that are eligible for longevity. Uniform allowance, half-year stipend for that new officer that we're looking at. That was the target at 32. We updated it to be 31,755, and that's to accommodate that half year, because we would only provide a half-year uniform allowance for that. Educational incentive, right now, we have 12 officers that have a bachelor's degree, and we have 5 officers that have an associate's degree. SRO stipend, we have 2 allotted. We have 1 in place with Hank, another shameless plug. Right now, we would have had that second SRO in place, but based on state mandates and what the training involves, and trying to backfill the vacancy we had, when our recruiters finally graduated from the academy and they're done FTO training, we'll look to put that second SRO back into the fold. But there are training requirements that we require for FTO training. That SRO won't be put in place until next school year. So that's what we're looking at for that. Traffic officer stipend remains the same according to the CBA. 19,095 for the canine care stipend. The next slide will show you the reduction in that. FTO differential, we do have a recruit coming out, and we're anticipating if we have the hire next year and it's approved, we'll start an FTO program when that person graduates from the academy too.
FTO is Field Training Officer.
Thank you.
Sorry. I should probably spell out the acronym so everybody knows. OIC is Officer in Charge. That is when a sergeant takes a night off and we have a senior patrol officer on shift, that person is the officer in charge. And they're required to do certain things on that.
For the education incentive, is that an incentive to pay back, or is that an above and beyond depending upon the education that the officer's coming in with?
It's a stipend. We don't pay for you to go get an education.
Right.
If you have a degree, we pay for that degree.
You pay it back?
We just pay a stipend.
A stipend for it, okay.
A straight stipend. A bachelor's has a certain stipend, master's, and associate's.
Okay, so do you have officers that are currently in school?
We do.
Okay.
But
Other than, I know
there's a
there's-
requirement, you have to be completed by a certain time, and you have to apply for educational incentive by a certain time.
Okay.
So this is what we currently have, and we're anticipating these degrees to be paid out next year.
Okay,
So if anybody has something after July 1st, they would have to wait till the following
got it,
second fiscal year.
okay.
Anything else? Here's your shameless plug. So, obviously decisions have to be made. Hank is a great addition to our department. Obviously, he provides a great service. I've been talking about this for 2 years to try to get it funded, and we understand the constraints. But, the dog is volunteered. We asked for an additional $19,000 to cover the FSLA care for the dog. That's 1 hour a day, every day. And it just wasn't in the cards this year. So that's the reduction that you're seeing. We're not saying that Hank's going away, but we felt it was necessary to make sure everybody knows that, Hank could retire. And I just don't have the money in the budget to cover another dog. To pay for the dog, to pay for the training, and then cover the FSLA requirements for that. Brad has been great about volunteering Hank, but he's noticed that he's getting a little older, he's getting a little slower like all of us, and, he just might not be there. I love this picture of the crown, trying to appeal to your hearts, and maybe you'll suggest that we should, reincorporate it and find that money and put it in there, but I know it's a long shot, but again, shameless plug. Any questions on Hank?
Are all of his puppies taken at this point?
I believe so, that they're high demand,
Figured.
high demand.
Nobody wants to volunteer one of them for?
No.
Is it in your plan to have another comfort dog in the future?
I would love to, yeah, absolutely. I'll keep asking, and We'll keep providing, and as long as Hank is in service, Brad will continue to offer that. But again, at a certain point, we'll have to make a decision there. The good thing is, when we eventually get this and we get to a point where we can have that funding, Brad has connections because of, you know, the breeder he works with, to help us with the cost of the dogs too, and the training.
Are there grant options available for,
I'm sorry?
are there grant options available for this at all?
Not comfort dogs.
No.
Patrol dogs, yes, but I think those are one-time grants also, the Stanton Foundation for K-9, that's how
The
we got
original.
Jerry. It's the START programs, but there's equipment grants and stuff that you can utilize to buy equipment for the dogs, but not typically for a comfort. But that could change, I mean, things could change. Hank was one of the first comfort dogs in the state. You know, and it's amazing, he's known nationwide now, and he's invited down to DC before Brad, which is probably a good thing, I think. But it really does take a hold around this country, and I've said this before, it's amazing what a comfort dog can do for you, and what it can do for you in schools. It has amazing effect there, and I give them a lot of credit for what they do. Anything else? Nobody wants to vote to say yeah?
You stole my question.
So
How
we'll
old
get
is
in.
Hank?
Nine, yeah. I can't believe he's been around that long, too. And, you know, the snacks he eats, I can't believe he's still around.
I'd like to say something. You have to remember that Hank is going to dictate when he retires. We're not talking about Hank passing away. We're talking about a 9-year-old dog getting jumped on by elementary kids, you know, the younger kids. As the dog gets older, if you ever had a dog that had arthritis, they no longer want to get touched.
Yeah.
They don't want to get pet because the arthritis is hurting, right? So that's what you have to think of with a comfort dog. Not passing away, but when is that dog's lifespan no longer able to tolerate, you know, so much affection and petting and kids jumping, pulling ears, stuff like that. So that would be, it's more of a temperament thing than a loss of life.
And I think, you know, year after year, we keep trying to get to that point. And we understand that there's funding issues, and we have to make decisions what's best for our department. You know, and eventually we'll get there. I mean, we'll keep pushing forward, and we'll see where we can get.
When the dogs retire, there's the functional equivalent of retirement lines for them, like we continue to pay
No.
once they're retired? No.
Once they retire, they're off our payroll, so to say.
And the handler typically
We
keep,
sign them over, well, Hank would be different because he volunteers that dog, he owns it.
Yeah, oh,
We
okay.
have no responsibilities for that. Jerry was different. Jerry was bought by the department. We signed the care over to Sergeant Tossi, so all the expenses go with him also at that
Okay.
point. And just for FYI, Jerry's doing very well, very happy. You know, makes an appearance every once in a while. All right, personnel expenses, overtime. So the overtime budget, Dave, we had talked about this and, you know, the increase and stuff like this. A lot of this is based on contractual obligations through the CBA. Vacation and personal time is calculated by the number of officers, a lot of benefit time, and taking into account their shift assignments. So if the lieutenant takes a day off, I don't have to backfill that. He's an administrative role. There's no need for shift coverage here. So that's how we calculate the overtime. We also have to account for when we hire somebody new, that we have to add in those type of calculations into it too. So that's where you see that increase. Community policing, again, we have to account for that officer coming in, and we took an average of 12 hours per officer who participate in community policing events. Just so you're aware, some of the community policing events that we do is RAD Kids. Hank is all over the place, appearing at events. We have a motorcycle that we put out there for community policing events, you know, homecoming parade. We'll put them on traffic decals out there for different events that are going on throughout town. When we talk about holiday pay, court time, and sick time, we take it on a 5-year average. So whatever we see as an average over the amount of shifts we have to fill, that's how we calculate that overtime in those lines. Investigative field services, that's anything beyond, that is not within those other line items. When we say an officer has to stay a couple hours to finish up a report, well, that's where that money comes out of. Like for that horrific scene, when we had all those officers in, that's IFS. That's beyond what those shift coverages are, and that's what the IFS is for. And that's a way for us to track, where our overtime expenses are.
I just wanted to point out on the other attachments, all of that is broken down on attachment D. The first 2 pages go into the actual benefit time, so that is what our officers are actually at their accrual based on their CBAs. So whether they have 4 weeks of vacation or 2 weeks of vacation. And then the last 2 pages go into the averages that we use and break down for the other accounts that he just spoke into, just so you know what those breakdowns look like.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to go back to real quick, it doesn't have to include the slide, but some of the questions came up about insurance and the other benefits. The salary that you see are benefited positions that we see for us. The insurance line, I can't speak to that. The insurance is covered by a PEC, negotiated through the town. I don't know what those coverages are. I wouldn't know what those costs are to every officer. Some officers take it, some officers don't. I don't know where they're at. Okay. Next slide, training. All right, this is really critical to me, critical to our department. Training is an important and critical to our overall mission. Police officers that are better trained, they perform better in the field, and that's a proven fact. The more training that we can provide officers, the better the officers are going to be in the community, the safer our community is going to be. We look at training for every officer coming in. We calculate hours based on what our mandates are from the state and what we feel we need to get to these officers for specialized training. Firearms training, 16 hours. Some of the mandates have changed a little bit with that. But I felt that it was necessary that we keep that type of hours within a firearms training on that platform. The state requires us to do 4 hours of skills-based training. That's not qualifications. That is just skills-based on all our platforms, every 3 months. That's why you see that number like that. We can't have a huge break in that training, and it is costly because we have to cover shifts, we have to backfill shifts under that. In-service training, we're mandated for 40 hours of training. 16 hours of that are on us, that we have to provide some type of training. Whether it's professional development, we've done things in the past like empathetics training. We do leadership training on a regular basis. We are involved in a group called FBI Leader that we send our supervisors to. There's another Leaders Helping Leaders network that we send officers to those type of trainings. So we are constantly looking for different types of trainings for officers. Specialized training would include things like active shooter training. And unfortunately, that's something that we really need to be on our game with, and we're continuing to work towards that. And then less than lethal training, we have to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, do you have something in capital also that's a training program,
Yep.
don't you, that's been approved, or is that high up on the list? I mean,
It's high up on the list. We didn't make the cut for that, and I put it in the slide just to show what we're looking for. It's called the Milo system. It's a
Okay.
way for us to do training without actually ever leaving the department. We can do in-house training, technology, working with that, with various different scenarios on that. And then that'll be, again, that'll be something that'll be on our radar for next year or a special town meeting that we can try to apply. Our less than lethal platform, we're required to recertify every year 4 hours on those platforms. We have various options that we have within our department that we have to train. Question?
No, I just noticed I have a typo here.
Okay. Typo, another one.
Just on that total, on the very top line there where it says training 4%, that 9,614 is that obviously is not the total between those three lines.
If you look at those three
So I
lines.
must have transcribed something wrong on that slide, my apologies.
Any questions on the training lines? Along those lines, and probably within a year, I sit on the training council for the state. I'm also on a subcommittee that's working with Post to develop a recertification process for police officers in Mass, and there will be additional mandates coming down. And it's going to come down hard and fast. They're by law. They're under police reform. They're mandated to have this process in place by July 1st, which I highly doubt would happen, but again, my certification is up June 30th, and something's got to be put in place, and we are going to see, some mandates. I know Chris has spoke about these mandates that the state puts on us, and they're unfunded. Unfortunately, we're in a position that we have to abide by that, or we lose certification. That's the difference between us and other unfunded mandates out there. Currently, we are a fully accredited police department. We are awarded accreditation back in October. And there's guidelines and policies and procedures and proof of compliance that we have to follow. So part of that is Post, and part of that is a certification process. So,
Do those changes come down through legislation, or do they
do.
come through a body that's going to set it? But-
came through police reform, Mass General Law 60, and those are all the mandates that came through, and that's what we talked about with losing reserves and what the requirements for a police officer in the state. Some good, some bad.
Yeah, I guess, maybe I heard you wrong. You thought something was coming midsummer.
Recertification process, so all officers are certified. We're in cohorts, A through H, I through P, whatever.
But you don't know the requirements of that
Not
yet?
yet. I'm sitting on a committee right now that we're working working that process out.
So that committee is who will set those requirements? Okay.
Post is our certification board, to say the least. Police officer standard and training, peace officer standard and training. Post was developed through police reform 2 years ago. So we're going to see some mandates come down.
That should say 99,000, it should have 2 nines, I had to just correct that, yep.
Type A personality, don't worry. Next slide, please. Is there any more questions on the training issues? Purchase of services, equipment maintenance, that's department equipment, whether it be our less than lethal platforms, anything that needs to be repaired, replaced, that's where that purchase of services comes from. Printing, postage, self-explanatory. Motorcycle lease, $5,000 a year for the Harley, which is pretty nice. The next slide is our police supplies. That detail software, that is our scheduling platform. And we are in the process right now of working with, and the finance director left, he doesn't know this yet, but we're trying to, Munis is able to talk to DTS. We're just trying to work out those fine points right now. And as soon as we can get that worked through, we're going to be able to submit our payroll right to Munis. We are excited. We've been working on this for 2 to 3 years now. That's one of our projects, Amanda and myself, that we've been working on to try to get this to work, and we're so close. We just want to get this done. But it'll make life easier for a lot of people too, especially, as you can see, our budget is complicated, and there's a lot of ins and outs to this, and that's why it's important for us to get the software working. Dues and memberships, slight increase in that. We've just seen an increase in our dues and memberships for different organizations. Training course fees kind of remained flat right now because we can pick and choose what courses we're going to send officers to that has a fee attached to it. Some courses require it, and we just try to figure out the best fit for our department, where we're going to be. Other expenses, office supplies, the firearm supplies. Again, like I said earlier, we pulled some invoices today just to make sure that we're on par with what we're asking for. Between our service weapons and the platforms that we have, with that, we're seeing a major increase. I'm hoping it comes down a little bit, and I'm hoping the supplies we have now will get us through the year. but we'll have to see. That's just an unknown at this point. I think a lot of that too has to do with, again, it's an election year, all those issues that go with that. Badges, that's just buying badges, patches, replacing uniform equipment, stuff that was needed. K-9 expenses is the insurance and food and supply and stuff for the K-9. Animal control, again, we've taken over that, that position into our department and incorporated it to kind of streamline our accounting and our tracking of it. We've taken the care and custody and incorporated it into the salary, just so we have a better tracking of where this line item and where this money is going. Also, there was a $4,000 charge for that kennel. That was a one-time request for that supply, and we took it off of this budget because as soon as we can find a fence company and put up a fence, we'll have a kennel back there. But that's a one-time cost, and we don't expect that to come back up.
Did you see it being done before the end of the fiscal year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of getting somebody that wants to do the job, too.
You know a fence guy?
Yeah. Do you know what? Please, send them our way.
Do you have to send that out
did all
for
the
bid?
prep work and everything
I'm
for
sorry?
it.
Do you have to send that out for bid technically? Because it's,
Technically, no, but it's a good idea to do it regardless of the cost. I just think it's good practice to find somebody that's going to do it at cost that we have allotted. DPW did a tremendous job for us. They cleared the area, put stone down, so we're just waiting for a fence company. So if we can get that, we'll get that done.
Does it have to be done well?
You're on the finance committee, I can't pay you, it's an ethical issue. Does it have to be done? You know what, let the dog run. There's a tether there. No, sorry. Our lockup expenses, is there any more questions on the ACO?
Chief, the care and custody, I don't know if I'm going to word this properly, but how is that money disseminated during the fiscal year each year versus it being in a salary line now?
It's paid out by stipend. We just can't, we don't know how many dogs she's going to care for at any given time, and that's part of the care and custody. The kennels are donated to the town. Her property is donated to the town, and we just don't, I couldn't tell you that she has 5 dogs that she took in her one. So it was easier to just put it into the salary line and track it that way. And we can track hours, we can see what's going on in that line.
It's broken down, it's paid a monthly stipend, the same every single month, and she submits backup for everything that she does. But it is the same stipend amount every month right now.
It doesn't
So
change.
it essentially is
Yeah.
paid as a salary already, because it's the same stipend each month.
Right. You know, Kathy's been at it for a long time, and I look at it as down the road when somebody else is in this position, is this the way to do it?
Where we've had this conversation with the town manager, she's well aware of that. Kathy is, she's been doing it for over 40 years. And once she retires, it's not going to be the same. I think it's going to end up being a salary that's going to be incorporated in the police department. We'll have a temporary kennel out back, and we'll have to figure out how to house animals that we take in. Because the temporary kennel we're putting out back, that's not meant to be substitute for what the ACO does. We did that because of what happened at our house with that vicious dog.
Right.
I don't want that to ever happen again, where we can put that dog in a kennel at our station, monitor it from cameras and stuff like that until we decide how we have to handle it. And then we don't have to worry about somebody getting hurt. Does that answer?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Lockup expenses. Again, we've asked for a reduction. That's part of our process, is evaluating where we can reduce and make sure that we're doing the right thing here. And we've seen a reduction in that already, so we reduced it again. We've kind of level serviced all the other supplies and purchase and services that go with the cell blocks and go with the supplies we put back there. Again, this is a benefit of having Worcester County Safekeep to keep our detainees. The only caveat is if we have female detainees, we have to house them. And that would cost the overtime, so we need to keep something.
is there any discussion in Worcester County to start taking females as well?
Not at this time, just because the Worcester County Sheriff is all male population there.
Okay.
I don't think, and I don't want to speak to this too much, because I don't think they could logistically handle that. Female detainees that are not subject to commitment go to Chicopee. So, until, like, to their sheriff's office out there. So we don't typically have something around there.
Okay.
Chief, aren't we just moving costs, though, from running our own lockup to the cost that we incur transporting the person to Worcester County?
Not really. It costs us over $2,500 for a weekend stay, where it cost me 4 hours to transport somebody to the tune of $200 and something.
Okay.
And that overtime cost still comes out of that line. So if we have to hire someone to transport, it comes out of this salary
The
line.
lockup salary line.
Okay. Okay.
On top of it, think about the liability we incur. The professionals are at Worcester County. They know how to handle prisoners, and that's where they should be.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Radio watch, salaries clerical, that's the desk clerk from 7 to 3. That zeroed out line is the line that we eliminated from 3 to 7 to accommodate for reallocating those funds to promote and hire for the lieutenant's position. Any questions on that?
Are those, are the officers that did, so I guess, is there going to be a concern with the reserve officers that are no longer able to have that potential income sticking around?
No, we have plenty of shifts.
Okay.
There's times when officers don't want to work overtime. If we have to cover shifts, that's open to the reserve officers. We have events throughout the year that there's a ton of work for them.
Okay.
It's there if they want it. I only request that they put in a certain amount of time every year, just so they can maintain certification.
Okay. So you're not at risk, you don't think you're at risk for losing additional officers if?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Okay, regional dispatch, that is the regional dispatch that we pay into. There was a slight reduction in that cost. We added a town, Boxborough came into our rec center, so that has reduced our costs. We are probably looking at, 212 was the target, but it might have been a little more because of budget increases at the center. But with the addition to the town has brought down that cost at this time. Vehicle maintenance, this is for anything that has to do with our cruises, or boat, UTV, whatever we have. Incorporates tires, brakes, oil, anything that we need for supplies, or even at the highway with the mechanic, if he needs supplies for our cruises, we purchase it out of this part here. Fuel, again, I will say this again, those hybrids have saved us, and it's good that we have those running. Saved us on the cost of that. Pretty straightforward. Is it any questions on those?
You don't think there's an issue with that one for election year as well?
For fuel costs?
Goes down.
Yeah, it goes down, right? For this year, it goes down because everybody wants to get elected, but
Right.
yeah, I think the hybrids are a good option for us right now for a community our size, and it really does reduce. I think we talked about this last year, about the cost of, we went through the roof if we didn't have the hybrids, and we really did. And those costs are astronomical for the municipality, so I think we're in good shape right there.
Okay.
So I did get your email, just so you know, about a level service budget and a ceiling budget at 2.5%. And this slide is going to explain exactly what we're looking at. The level service budget that the town manager had on that target that she provided you with this sheet is everything except for the FSLA coverage for the comfort dog. But when we look at it, we have contract obligations. So we took a look at it, what it would cost us at a 2.5% increase, and that's the ceiling.
Okay.
When we did it that way, we're looking at suspending the hiring plan again for the second year in a row. Reduction of services could include that one school resource officer, because they may need a patrol officer out there. The co-response program, I would really have to take a look at that, because if I have to reduce supervision or reduce that lieutenant on that shift, that co-response, we're looking at primarily that person working eves. I really have to take a look at that at this point. Community programs such as RAD and RAD Kids, you know, those things might have to be reduced. The desk would be, without that promotion, that means we're going to try to keep that desk, but I'd have to reduce it from 5 days to 2.5 days a week. And again, I think keeping that lobby open is important to the public to have access to us. And now that if we have that lieutenant in there, they have access to us in that lobby till 11 o'clock at night. Any questions on that ceiling? Our capital plan replaced the K-9 cruiser. The cruiser's old, so we're looking at, that was approved for a capital plan. Replaced the traffic car, same thing. It's an older model Tahoe that we want to decommission and sell. And then the Milo training system, that was put below what the line was for capital plan approvals. But again, next year, we'll try again. I think it's important to have training material and training tools for the department.
To go back to the Milo and grants again, are there incentivized grants out there for
There is.
training programs? I would assume there's.
Yes, sometimes there's training programs for free that we take advantage of. Milo system, there are competitive grants for these, and sometimes departments our size just don't compete.
Okay.
But there are opportunities, and it's not that we wouldn't ask for that through a grant anyways, and try to get to that point. Dave and I had discussions about bulletproof vests and how do we try to minimize those costs too, and there's grants out there, we try to get to those grants also. But again, that's tough, you can't, the grants won't allow you to use that money until those vests are expired. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, you know, with that. But again, we keep looking, we keep trying to get out there. To hire the new position, there are Cops Fast grants out there through the Department of Justice. Those are very competitive, but there are stipulations with that too. It's not exactly free money. There's percentages they pay, so it's not they're paying the entire salary for the year. There's percentage-based stuff for that. But again, we look at those.
Chief, have you been able to quantify any offset expenses if you did have the Milo program?
No, because I think the training we do, this is an additional training platform, but what it does is it allows me to train on a daily basis, shift change, taking guys off the road for 15 minutes to come in and do some training with the training officer. So it's an addition to what we already use.
Okay, so this isn't the type of training that they'd be out of town for at any given time?
Correct. This would be, you know, there might be, we would host a department training, and that could be a cost, correct. But this we could use on shift, we can use at shift change. It's just, it's a great tool. It's a great technology tool that we could assess.
Last question I have is on the vehicles. I've been under the understanding in the past year or so that we've flipped just about all the vehicles that we can to hybrids and take advantage of green communities. There's nothing left in the fleet that will flip?
No, we do still have some gas-powered vehicles, the Tahoes, that we're cycling out right now. We got one that's about to go on municipal bid, and, you know, we'll cycle down one of the hybrids down to the spare vehicles. One hybrid we are going to put on municipal bid just because I think it was 11 when we bought it. Please don't publicize that when I put that on municipal bid. I think there's a ghost in that thing. We've had so many issues with it that, so the next Tahoe will cycle out on our next round of vehicles.
The only reason I bring it up is that it looks like Green Communities is going to try to hit the April grant round this spring, and then we won't be eligible again for another 12 months.
Right. I got that email from Heather. I think we're okay because of the amount of hybrids we have right now, and we still qualify. And on top of it, I believe, I'm just not 100% sure of this, but this new cruiser we're purchasing would qualify us for that $5,000.
Would not.
Would. I
Would.
think I just don't know enough about that at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other I guess, in the same way that we're teaming up with Lancaster, to share that resource that you and Officer McNamara were pushing for, are there other community shareable platforms like this for the training system that can be used between departments?
Yeah, the Milo system, absolutely, VR systems. We share instructors. We partner with Groton, usually in the spring, to do our DT training, defensive tactics training. So there are opportunities to share that type of, those resources, whether it's having an instructor come in from another department or us providing an instructor for them.
Okay.
There are those possibilities, and we continue to look for those.
Okay.
It's just a matter of the logistics and trying to get it.
It's easier when it's in the building.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Anything else? Goals, again, I say this every year, to continue that hiring plan and get it back going. Goal 2 is, I say this every year, well, actually not every year, but the next one will be, but to maintain and evaluate the co-response program. To be responsible, we should reevaluate it and make sure that this is the right program from our community and it's helping us. One of the added benefits, and I probably should have mentioned this when we were going through the budget process, the money and stuff, is that it provides me a clinician embedded within our department, but it also gives access to my own officers to that clinician. And we all know that police suicides are terrible, and it's on the rise, and it happens. And we want to make sure our officers are well and they're taken care of, and this gives me access to that. So that's another positive thing that we look at for the month of health. Next slide, please. Our MPTC training and our post requirements, we have to maintain this. This is a goal that we should have every year. Again, training is critical to the department. It's critical to me. Training is something I value tremendously. I was a training officer for a long time. So this is important that we keep this goal within our process. Next slide. Citizens Police Academy, I said this last year, I wanted to get this going again, and every time I say we're ready to go, we have attrition or we have something else that comes up, but the goal is to start this in the fall, plan, and I am going to push hard that we get to this. I think it's important. We did this for a few years and it kind of fell off the last year. We didn't have a lot of participation. But I think it's important that we get this out there so people understand what we do on a regular basis, and it gives them a little sense of what the officers do on a daily routine or daily basis, and the challenges we face. A part of that Citizens Police Academy, I am looking at a youth cadet program. Myself and Amanda are working with the director right now to develop some type of summer program for this. And I would, if we can get this going, I'd be thrilled. We need to get younger generation to understand what we do, build those relationships, and try to recruit and try to get them interested in a career in policing. Next slide, please.
What's required to do this? Is it just time of officers?
Just time. Volunteering officers or CP officers coming in and do the training. Program is fairly straightforward, what we do, what we teach. And it's just to give them a little taste of what an academy or a cadet program would look like.
In the 6 to 8 week program, how many hours per week would that be?
We still working that logistic out because we're just trying to see how many hours, that we would put, because we want to offer it out to different age groups too. And that would be like, okay, week 1 would be grade 5, week 2 would be grade 6 or something to that fact. So those are logistical issues we're still trying to work out.
But is it like a handful of hours a week, or?
Yeah, we would look at probably anywhere from 36 to 40 hours a week. Put them through an 8-hour day, make them get there at 6 in the morning, and PT with the PT with our staff, physical training, and then put them through what a typical day would look like at an academy. Some fun stuff too, you bring in.
Do they get to do a ride-along?
I can't, not at that age. That's a huge liability. We limit ride-alongs to anybody that's over 18. It's just, don't want to take that chance. Goal number 5 is to continue our RAD program. It's important. I think in RAD Kids is very important to our community. Everybody's trying to see who's in that picture. We have permission to have this picture up. But we are working with the rec director again to work through, right now, we're looking at something hopefully in April for a spring vacation, and we want to do something in the summer. This program is limited to hours. We're not going to put these kids through 8 hours of training like that. It's reduced. And again, shameless plug, I'll let my RAD instructor coordinator talk about that a little bit.
Sure, so we usually run this program for kids 8 to 12, age range 8 to 12. It is limited to 3 hours per day, and it is 20 hours total. Like the chief said, we're working to develop something with the rec director. She's been fantastic to work with, both for the vacations as well as the summer program. We're also looking at potentially in April running another Citizens RAD program, so that would be more for teenagers and adults as the self-defense class. So we're looking at getting that on the schedule as well.
And please pass that along to anybody that's interested. The more interest we get, the more classes we can run. Next slide. Employee evaluation, this is an important tool it allows us to see where our deficiencies are, where we can improve, where we need training. By no means is this meant to be a punitive type of measure, but it's a way we can see where our leadership is, where we need to develop, and we can give feedback to officers to say, for you to get to this level, this is what you need to do. And that's still a work in progress, gaining information with that and try to get something down in writing. Okay.
Does that get to go the other direction as well?
What's that?
Does that get to go the other direction as well with upward evaluation?
Sure does.
60s.
But
That's
again,
what it is, 360 evaluation, thank you.
But it works in a sense where it's not punitive, that
Right.
we can, those deficiencies, and if it goes the other way, we can work with you to make you better, to get you to that level where we expect you to be. So it's a great evaluation, a great tool.
You're saying there's not evaluations on a yearly basis right now?
Not right now, no. Been working on that for 2 or 3 years now to try to get that process going.
I don't believe there is anywhere in town.
There is, not in town, and typically in Massachusetts, evaluation processes are very difficult to get through and to get an agreement with the unions and stuff. I'm fortunate that we have a great relationship with our union, and they're willing to work with us on this. So we will come up with a product that is going to be satisfactory to our police officers and our management.
So even like, do you have an evaluation every year with
Yeah,
town managers?
I'm sitting right here and being evaluated right now. I do, I have goals and stuff and that's part of this, is the goals that I set.
But you're non-union, so
Yeah, I mean,
it's the
I
union.
can tell you the clerical union does not have evaluations.
Right.
I'm, to be quite honest, I'm evaluated on a regular basis, based on how I perform here, or how I perform to the public, and what services we provide as a police department. Our failures are on me. That's my responsibility, to make sure that we're, doing the things that are good and making sure those things are right.
I did not know there was not evaluations.
Well, I put that on
Townwide either, she said.
That's, yeah. I didn't know that.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
I understand, but
I don't understand.
I understand that it can be difficult to get it through a collective bargaining. I can understand the pushback on that side for why we're in this position.
I put
doesn't
that on
mean
my
we shouldn't.
evaluation. Do you pay attention? It's on my program. It's on my slide every year. Because I've been working. I really am working towards this, and I think it's an important tool, more so than a process.
So how would you, if just example, if an officer wasn't performing as well as you thought they could, how do you then present that to them? Or, on the other side, they did a spectacular job. How do you, is that just, isn't that an evaluation? I mean, 'cause you don't, it's not about money. I mean, a lot of people get, I want my annual review so I can get my raise. This, since you're a union, you don't have that.
Right. It's
So-
totally, we deal with issues that we see deficiency either through send them into training, counseling, one-on-one with their supervisor,
Right.
with the lieutenant or myself, to get them to a certain place. As for the person that does great, we give them accommodations. I'll put them right up in front of the Board of Selectmen.
So there is a valuation per se, just not
Per se.
formalized.
Yeah, it's not formalized, correct. But my goal is to make that formalized as a process of, more of a training tool than anything else, to show where we need to be better, or where you're doing great, you know.
I want to be a lieutenant, what do I need to do to get there?
Apply for his job, I'll have an
No,
application.
no, I mean, that's what I mean. No, I mean, if you have a
Correct.
person who wants to move up, what do I need?
Right.
What's my next goal? What's my next step? That would be,
Perfectly
that would be a
put.
great
That's
process
perfectly
to have.
put. And that's what the process should do, is to put you on a path to better yourself and get to the next level. And that's what we should be looking at.
You want to write another letter?
No.
Are you done writing letters?
Apparently.
Is there any questions?
I had
committee.
one quick question, just, at the Council on Aging, when they were talking about shoveling out some people in town, older people in town, that's you, okay.
That's
So,
me.
is,
You want to help?
you know, I'm retired now, so I could actually use
I
the
got another
exercise.
seat in my car. Anybody
No,
can come.
is that, does the fire department do that, and you, or is it both, or?
Look at it.
you- Okay, so is that the best place for it, having you doing it? Is there some other way that could be done?
There was a need.
All right,
I
oh,
spoke
definitely.
up, and I got volunteered.
Right. Well, no,
Voluntold.
I'm not,
Sue said,
this is not a
okay.
criticism, it's like, you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. This is, now that I know it's you, Mike, is that the best use of your time? Not that it shouldn't be done, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but other people could do it, I mean, I could just imagine brainstorming.
Anybody who wants to help out, Monday through Friday, I'm in my office, 703-978-582-4151.
Get that out there, everybody?
Extension 1423.
So you know, yeah, it takes time away. But you, tonight, through this entire presentation, and I think I'll go back and just make sure, but I don't think I used the term law enforcement once. Policing is policing now. We're community-based policing. The idea of helping community is what we're supposed to be doing also. The lieutenant volunteered, he wasn't voluntold. He's seen a need, and I commend him for that. That is something that, he's like, but that is something that makes me proud as a chief, that my second in command recognized the need for somebody in this community that was struggling, and took the time and said, okay, I'm gonna take care of this. And that's what we should be doing as a community. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever the time is, I'll sacrifice the time to help somebody at that given moment. And yes, if somebody wants to volunteer, I did go out and said, okay, let's get him a small snow blower so he doesn't blow out his back. He is getting older, shoveling gets tougher, so.
Like Hank?
Yeah, it does, right? You know, not that he's gonna, your body gets older, it's hard to do that. But he recognized a need, and I commend him for that. And I don't think I'd ever take that away and say, yeah, go have another organization do that. And I think he
The other
likes
thing
doing it.
Yeah, the other thing you have to think about is that it's our most vulnerable in our community.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually put eyes on them in storm situations. Hey, how's it going? They come out, they thank me. Meals on Wheels makes their delivery. and they get their Meals on Wheels for the day.
So it's part of the, Meals on
It's
Wheels
part of
thing?
the whole program, yeah,
Okay.
that Sue runs, yeah.
And you have had other officers come in and assist you when they have.
Yeah, if it's a big storm, you know, people do help me.
So,
Well, you have a truck, you could put a plow on it.
We could, but I
Yeah.
think
Remember
it
that
would
truck?
destroy the frame.
That's, the truck is used for that.
How many people do you,
16.
16, you said? Okay.
It's a worthwhile program, it really is, you know, granted. Anything else? I thank you for the time. I appreciate this as always. I'm always open to questions also. If you have something that comes up later, please email me, call me. I'm available.
I do have one more question,
Sure.
actually, and one more for Casey. Thank you for staying, because it's going to include you as well. Thank you for putting together all of that. It was extremely detailed. I really do appreciate it. And for the slide about the 2.5% increase, I appreciate that as well. Comparing your requested budget to the total budget from the town, or the preliminary budget, excuse me, is slightly different. It's $20,000 in difference, I believe, roughly. Does that still meet the needs of the town as where we are currently? I know you have the 10-year staffing plan,
Boy, that's a loaded.
it certainly is, but I just want to make, I mean, public safety is public safety, it's not,
I'm going to tell you no, because that money, that $20,000 difference that we talked about is that price that we would look at for a comfort dog. I think it's valuable. I think the emotional stresses that we see on a regular basis now within our schools, outside of schools, and, you know, and I think you've seen within that 10-year plan, my goal is to kind of eventually separate out a community outreach officer to take that comfort dog and do something else with it, not only in the schools, but out in the community. Be at the senior center, be at the Boys and Girls Club, do different events like that also. So I would say, yeah, there is, that it doesn't meet our needs. But I also don't want to be selfish here. I understand the pitfalls and I understand the struggles that we're having right now as a community. And the last thing I want to do is present anything that would affect anybody else's budget also. You know, I don't want to do that. I'm not here to be divisive. I'm not here to pit one department against another. My job is to make sure that this community is safe and provide a budget that can do that.
and you feel that, comfort dog aside, this budget,
The budget I presented and requested was approved, yes. That'll meet our needs.
okay, excellent. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for the microphones and chairs.
Casey, is it possible to ask you the same question? Is the budget as presented meeting the IT needs of the town at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
I think, thank you. Yes, I believe that the budget presented is going to be meeting the needs looking forward into the next fiscal year.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, next up is, I threw it on there just because you had asked for you had a conversation with Ezekiel, so I wanted to have a chance to talk about it if you wanted to, the revenue and expenditures recap from FY '21 to '23. I know you've done a little bit of work on it. I've looked through it some.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you sent it out to everyone.
I did.
At this point. Maybe it's just a discussion we need to have in the off-season, but I find it very powerful to be able to have Excel-based data that shows trends and a means by which you can kind of drill in and drill out and look at various things. So I don't know, going forward, it would be nice if we could get something like the version I sent you with kind of pivot tables or something that, you know, you can get questions answered and get to the root of, you know, your own questions for it, so. It would be nice to have fiscal year '24 in there and then also have the data associated with this budget, so.
I mean, I think we could at least put it in for, if we go off of the preliminary budget, we can use that for this year. And if we go off of what's been presented as the FY '24 budget, it may not be the certified one of it, the final closeout budget, but at least it's something to work off of.
Yeah,
It's easy enough to do.
yeah.
Has anyone else had a chance to look through those spreadsheets? I know we've had a lot going on. Okay. I'll add it for a future discussion after budget season, but I agree. I think having that to kind of revisit quarterly or even just biannually or something like that, ahead of budget season to kind of say,
Yeah.
project, this is where our forecast, or this is where we're heading towards.
Well, and it also goes towards, you know, my windmill, I guess I'm chasing on, you know, let's get to that 10-year plan on both the capital needs, the operational needs, what are the plans of each of the, you know, town departments, and then, you know, just as an example, I think the police department's done a great job of laying out a hiring plan, a plan that they try to follow, and, you know, last year they took a hiatus on it, but this year they're back towards their hiring plan. So I think the more we know as a town, the more we're able to deal with surprises. And then, you know, the other thing that just along the same lines I tend to get frustrated with is people kind of sometimes use facts and figures and they're not actually accurate, right? Like, so for example, you know, the Prop 2.5% increases do not keep up with inflation. That's actually not true. Over the last 15 years, on average, it's been at 2.5%. Now, some years it's higher and some years it's zero and whatever, but the fact is, over the last 15 years, inflation has averaged 2.5%. So the more you get to like just true data and the ability to show data, I think it gets some of the sensationalization out of some discussions and enroots you in facts. So that's kind of what I'd like to get ultimately out of those, and why I asked for them, just so I could, on my own, my daughter keeps calling me, try to assess stuff, but, so.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea. I think we should continue with it as well. And perhaps it's something we suggest to other departments as well, that the success of the police department and their 10-year budget has helped them to kind of prepare for the future and having at least some type of a plan, whether it be a staffing plan or an expense plan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is there I know there's a 5-year budget that the town manager was looking at. Is that, has that been something we've had in the past? I don't remember seeing them.
Karen would put it together
Karen,
for the most part.
So,
Under Heather's directive, but yeah,
Right,
it was
so-
them working hand in hand with it.
I mean, obviously, that would, I'll give you my history of those things. We had, where I worked, we had a 3-year budget, and it was so hard to get the next year's budget, the first year. It was very difficult to get the staff, the departments to get second and third year and get real numbers, real, you know, because it was 2 and 3 years away. How big are we going to grow? What's going to happen? But so they weren't as meaningful as they should be. I think we missed out, and I think this town could miss out if we don't put the effort into the second, third, fourth, and fifth year as best we can. We don't know what inflation and all the other things will be. We have, what's health insurance going to be next year? We don't know. But 5 years from now, we don't know. But if we just put in some numbers just to get a sense, it'll help. For example, the half position this year. Well, this year it shows one thing, next year it's going to be a full year. And then capital items and all those other things that we could have, trucks and, and whatever other items, so we can all see those. So I think it would be advantageous to put the extra effort in to get a good 5-year plan. If we had one last year, now, it wouldn't show all the things that we now know, because we would have to make guesses, but we might have a better idea. I know I did hear a lot last year, next year's going to be a tough year, we're losing the COVID money, so we're going to have to make decisions. But I didn't really see any, okay, what does that mean in real dollar terms? What does that mean in staff? What does that mean in other things? So I think the more we put on that, the better our future will be. It's not going to help our past, but I think one of our jobs could be is to recommend that we work on that harder. And I know we have a new person who just started. Don't want that person to be overworked, but I think it would be very helpful. And I think some of the departments are already doing that. The police, I think the superintendent of schools had a plan too. Make sure that that's in there and with the numbers that we can best guess.
You can always make different projections as well. You can offer a conservative, a moderate, and
Right.
a hopeful
Yeah, you can say,
trajectory.
4%, 5%, whatever, things that you might know, put in there, and things that you don't. And we go, 5 years from now, we're gonna be looking at that budget going like, that wasn't even close.
But having that data allows you to forecast better for the next 5
Right,
years.
yes, right.
Because you have historical data and historical trends
Tracking,
at that
right.
point. Right now, it's a scattershot every year.
This technology that we're gonna wanna buy 3 years from now that hasn't been invented yet.
Right.
So how could we budget for it? But it is good to do that, I think, and the more we can do, the better. The other thing is, and, I sit there and say you have, doing good and being the most efficient and the most cost-effective are, two different things. Like with the police department, having the lieutenant out there, that's a great thing, and it's an important thing, and maybe as a policing thing, that might be good. But is there other ways to do that? Other ways to, to other people either in the town or others to do that, that would be less expensive and not giving up any of the value that we have. So those are the things that the town should be looking at also.
All right, any other discussion on this? All right, taking the suggestion of Ms. Lockwood last week, who had to wait around for hours, is that I'm going to open up a public comment specifically on the two presentations that we just heard this evening, so the information technology and the police budget. So if there is any public comment from the public on either of those, feel free to step on up or raise your hand on Zoom. All right. Moving on to old business, the town grant writer letter. So we received from Ms. Tavares an original copy, and then Jay, you sent out a revised one at 5. I have not read that over yet, I will be honest with you. So I don't know what the changes were that you had proposed. But I can pull it up at least. Actually, what I'll do is just do a side-by-side and project them. And share screen. Okay. So Jay, were yours just primarily, what type of changes were you making? Were they substantive or just sort of?
Kind of more wordsmithing.
Okay.
change to substance.
All right. So I will, if everyone's okay with it, I will read the letter that Jay proposed with the changes. We can work off of that one, since that is a more updated version. So that is this one here. Let's go to width. I have not used Word in forever. There we go. All right, dear Select Board members, the Finance Committee wishes to express our sincere interest and support for funding grant writing services for the town of Lunenburg. The town manager, Heather Lemieux, has itemized the amount of $50,000, line 650, on the FY25 preliminary budget for this contracted service. Grant writing services would enhance the town's ability to increase revenues for the town and has the potential.
That's the only error I found in it. That's got to be potential, not potentially.
Yep. And has the potential to reduce funds being taken from the tax levy. The committee considers taking this initial step to be a starting point in the process without adding a benefited staff member to the town budget. It would provide opportunity to work with persons with particular expertise in the field of various types of grants. Through some collaborative research, we have found that grant writing services could support the following areas by creating additional sources of revenue. 1, educational grants supporting staff, buildings, educational tools. I'm sorry, but I am a stickler for the Oxford comma, and technologies, etc. Number 2, matching grants to offset costs to municipal projects. Number 3, grants that would support and benefit the housing initiative for seniors and veterans. Number 4, the Council on Aging could benefit on grants that would allow them to add support staff. Number 5, preservation and revitalization grants for historical lands and buildings. This would also potentially add funding for the Cemetery Commission's initiative. That would be an apostrophe S. This is not to understate the fact that we have members of our municipal government that have and continue to bring in grant money. Those efforts are greatly appreciated, and we hope these services will work in tandem with these members' continued efforts and support. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Sorry, I'm just deleting periods from other stuff. Any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, collaborations?
I'm good with it.
I was one of the original authors, so the little tweaks that we've made are good. The only other thing would be to update the date on the letter when we finalize it and sign it.
That's a good point. The only sentence I have that's a little bit tricky is it would provide opportunity to work with persons with particular expertise in the field of various types of grants. It's just slightly muddy, but I'm okay with it. It gets to the point still.
8-person.
Yeah. Provide opportunity to work with a person or with people.
Or a professional.
With a profession, with, yeah,
Yeah,
with professionals.
Professional.
That's good.
Professionals, okay, it would provide opportunity to work with professionals with particular expertise in the field of various types of grants. Okay.
I think it's good.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me change the date.
I'm sure Lou Franco will scrutinize us on it, but
I think he's on the call.
I know.
The Gene that is currently on the call, is that our Gene?
It is.
Okay.
Oh,
And I think it looks good now.
Okay.
I'll put her name back up. I didn't know she was there.
In that case, I would happily entertain a motion of any kind.
I'll make a motion that we approve the letter and send it to the select board. And
Second.
authorize the chair to send it to the select board.
Second.
All right,
Get you a second.
any other discussion?
Yeah, the only thing is, I know there's one select board member here, and there was one on Zoom. I'd like to request that the letter actually be read as a communication from other committees or boards during the meeting when it gets to them, rather than just in their drive and they sit there and look at it and read it and go on from there.
I can send it over to the select board chair as a request for communication from other committees. It's a great idea.
Just as a note to the, not to the letter, but the overall issue of what we're trying to do here, there is still some communications being stated that we're looking for a grant writer position. That was stated at the school committee meeting last night. I didn't stay long enough to correct it, but we've got to make sure that everybody's clear that, you know, we intentionally are doing, we're looking for funding for services, not a staff member to do the grant writing. That way we can pick and choose, like it says in the letter, the expertise, and if we don't need the expertise, then we don't spend the money.
That was some of the corrections I made in the letter, because it sounded like it was more position as opposed to contracted services.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, it's a roll call vote. Ms. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Passios?
Aye.
Mr. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Simeoni?
Aye.
Mr. Menard?
Aye.
And an aye from myself. We are unanimous, and I will send that off to the select board. Thank you very much, Mr. Passios and Ms. Tavares, for putting that all together. It's appreciated, and hopefully it bears some fruit.
It's great to have somebody that can type about 1,000 words a minute.
Okay. Not that one. This one. I lost my agenda. There it is. All right, next up on the agenda is the discussion on FY25 budget update and discussion, and I have taken your comments, Chris, last meeting, and public comment as well, and I've added for sure, so we have no question about it, to specifically discuss the override warrant article. But I do still feel that a discussion around the budget and an update on the budget warrants discussion around that as however it ends up going. So first I'll open it up to just general discussion on where, if anyone has any updates or conversation to have about where we are with the budget currently and the process that we're going through so far.
I don't.
I was going to do it as a committee comment at the end, but I guess I'll just throw it in here. I will emphatically say at this point that as I consider myself a representative of at least 30% of the residents of this town, because I'm one of that 30%, that I will not be voting for an override. Nobody has convinced me that we need it, and it may very well drive me out of town also. So that's my position, and it's going to be very hard for anybody to change my mind on that. I was a little disappointed or shocked, actually, when I got back from South Carolina and heard somebody say that the Finance Committee voted to move this forward. I didn't expect a vote was going to happen after I needed to leave the other night. I'm not seriously upset about it, but I was surprised that there was a vote. Other than that, you know, we'll let the process move forward in whatever direction it ends up going and see what happens.
It was 4-2, so it would have passed.
Yeah,
And I
it still would have
made-
passed. It would
made
have
a
been
comment to
4, it
myself that
definitely
I-
would have been 4-3.
But it would have been nice to have a full committee vote.
Yeah, it would have, but
I honestly don't even know what we voted on still. I don't know if I was just falling asleep by 11 o'clock or I was not feeling well, but to me, it was kind of a non-vote. It was just, we're going to do something, which I thought we were going to do anyways, but
No, it was beyond that. It was a vote that was going to allow us to pull together numbers, to work in tandem with what we're tasked to do, which is go through the proposed budget as presented by the town manager. And to vet that and discuss that and make opinion on that and suggestions on that. But at the same time, because while I completely understand there's 30% of the public out there that are on fixed incomes for the most part, and there's also 20% of the public that seems to be out there rallying and saying they're going to do it no matter what. And rather than get to town meeting and have utter chaos on the floor, the thought was, we are the ones that see all of the budgets and have the deepest dives into the budgets. If there's going to be numbers that are put forward, whether they're used by the select board or whether they're used by the town or a citizen's petition, at least the numbers will be accurate for what's there. And it at least it has the potential to reduce the town meeting floor anarchy.
I'm just concerned that it's going to pull our focus away from the budget at hand that needs to go to town meeting floor, fully vetted, and as promised, at least by myself, at the beginning of this process, the best possible budget we could bring forward. There are so many budget iterations out there floating around, especially from the school side. I don't think there's less than 5. And this is what jumbles everybody's recollection and knowledge going into town meetings. I really hope we settle this thing down well in advance of town meeting so people really know what we're going there to talk about and vote on.
That was another reason why, is because we have deadlines. We have to have this, I mean, the warrant closes on the 18th, so that means that there's, 19 days to for people to put something together. There are budgets going all over the place. I think their schools are actually up to 6 now, but only 5 are being presented. And I believe the town manager just asked for another, oh no, she just asked for the spreadsheets for them. But because this is such a rushed process that should have been started in October, like I believe most overrides had, I think the only way that it can get forward is if there is some type of a body that says, here's the numbers that we're supposed to look at, and then here's also the numbers that fit this narrative of this is what's needed, what people think this is what's needed. And I don't think it takes away from our job because we're still going through the budget as presented. And the task of pulling numbers together has basically fallen on myself, which is fine. I have no problem going through the budget and doing that. I don't think it is the Finance Committee's specific duty to bring an override warrant article to town. But at the same time, I can actually convince myself that it is the Finance Committee's task to bring it to town, to the floor. Because the Select Board, while their job is to go through the budget as well, they're being presented with the budget as from the town manager's side. And it's sort of in line with what the Select Board, to my understanding at least, feels the budget should kind of go down, the direction the budget should head. It is that board's directive, or at least direction, not directive, So it still kind of keeps it in this narrow gap of this is what we have to look at. The general public is going to see occasional meetings, they're going to see occasional budgets, they're going to find some of them on the website, some of them they won't be able to find because who knows where they are. The only people that actually have a full in-depth understanding of what the budgets are and what the departments may potentially need are the finance committee, the town manager, and probably Miss Emke, because she's here at every single meeting.
Department heads.
Well, they'll know within their own departments, of course, yeah.
Well, I'm sure they're paying attention to the whole budget.
I would hope so, but I don't know for sure.
Nobody knows, but
Right. So that's the reason why. And that's what I think that's my intention of what to bring forward, is just to have, and it's going to be on for next week. Because that's the time we have. The school department is voting next week for theirs, what they recommend. They voted to recommend an override last night.
they did.
Well, they voted to support an override. Hang on, let me get the exact quote. Yes, they voted to support an override. 4-1, with the ones being someone who didn't know the numbers yet and understands the finance committee well, and that we can't work off of numbers we don't have. They did not vote on which of the 4 budgets were presented last night. So there were 4 budget numbers that were given by the school committee. One for level service all the way across the board. Everything stays level, including ESSER positions. One where it's level service minus the ESSER positions. One where it's the town manager's preliminary recommended budget, plus I think another $40,000-ish, another like 0.2%, 0.4%. And then a superintendent's budget, which is lower than, or it's higher than the town manager's budget, but lower than the level services minus the ESSER budgets. But none of those numbers are known for sure.
Lower than the ESSER budget too? I didn't stay for that part, so.
Correct. So they gave out 4 numbers. So there's the town manager's budget, which is right around 3%. And I've seen it's 2.94 to 3.02%, depending upon which one you're looking at. And that ends up being an increase of about $684,000 year over year, as is being presented to us currently. With that, they drop, I think, 27 FTEs. There was the next one up is the superintendent's budget, as I'm calling it, and that is a 5.42% increase year over year, which works out to 1.2 million, 1.245 million. So the differential over the town manager's budget for that one is about $565,000. So it's a little under twice the town manager's preliminary budget for that one.
Did they have an FTE loss under that budget?
19.7.
Thank you.
That one that one was somewhat debated by the school committee, but for the most part, it was not really favored. The next one up was the level services, so current level services plus increases in expense lines that are necessary and personnel expense and cost of living expenses and whatnot. Minus the ESSER funds.
Before, after COVID positions are gone?
Correct,
Okay.
taking out the ESSER position, so it's a loss of 12 FTEs still. That one is a year-over-year increase of 8.73%, which works out to $2,002,000, roughly $2,003,000. So that one is $1.323 million over the current preliminary budget as presented by the town manager. That one is the one that got the most traction by the school committee. So they did not go as far as to say they're going to vote on it because they don't have the more concrete numbers. They have a whole bunch of facilities numbers that are sort of up in the air and they're not really sure about. So they're meeting with the facilities director next week to discuss that a little bit more and then make a vote on one of these budgets to support. The last one, go ahead.
That one there, how many FTEs?
12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 8 licensed educators and 4 tutors
I
that
wrote
were.
the note down so early, I forgot about it already.
And then the final one
Yep.
is the level service with all FY24 level positions. No position losses, nothing at all. That's an 11.46% increase year over year. Works out to $2.63 million, which is 1.95 million over the town manager's preliminary budget. That one did not seem to get any support whatsoever.
So that's starting to give them an indication as to what number they're going to need on that side of the budget if there is an override.
And that's, so last night they had me come up at 10 o'clock at night and kind of give an idea as to what happens next, and because they weren't sure. And I said, honestly, I think they can just use one of these numbers because we get to town meeting, or we get to our public hearings and we have X's for and dollar values for a number of our moneyed articles. We don't find them out until later on in the process. For this, obviously, though, it needs to be done by March 19th because it's got to be a warrant article. And you can't do it as a placeholder article because it has to go on the ballot by the 19th.
Yeah, and it needs to be, the number needs to be printed in the warrant, I believe, on
It
this
does.
one. The other thing being, oh, I just lost it. I'll get it back in a minute or two. Oh, I know what it was. The actual budget that goes into the warrant, no matter what, is going to need to be a balanced budget without an override.
Correct.
Yes,
No, it doesn't.
yes, it does.
In the
Town
warrant?
manager said we can leave town meeting with an unbalanced budget.
Yes.
Said that
Yes, we
a few
can,
weeks
but
ago.
we can't propose one as a warrant article.
Correct. We have to propose a balanced budget on the article for the omnibus budget has to be a balanced budget that's presented.
Proposed budget, it can be
Right.
changed on the floor.
And it can also be voted down on the floor. I mean, there's,
We tend to not even put values in the warrant articles anymore.
right.
But I do want to say, like, I've asked at least twice that I think we need town council to advise us on all the approaches that can be taken related to overrides. And we've still not had that. So I think for us to kind of do our own research and piece together the process for this is not the right approach for us to be focusing on. Furthermore, I think school committee needs to come up with what they think they need for a budget. And they need to communicate that with the select board and see what movements can be made on the municipal side. And if not, whether the select board is in support of an override to put on the warrant and the ballot. And honestly, the ballot thing, that could be done later too.
It could, absolutely. Well, yes, you just have until,
You have
Is it
90
90
days
days?
from when it's passed.
you have 90 days,
90
well,
days.
yeah, correct.
And again, I think the warrant article language and the ballot language is very prescriptive. So the only thing we really need is the why we're doing it, which would be, for school, whatever, and then the dollar value. So, but I really think it's incumbent upon the executive branch to come forward with their asks as it relates to municipal and school, and come together and then have us recommend or not recommend.
I'm just pulling up their agenda for next week.
I mean, I think it's important for us all to be having this discussion, and I think everyone is having this discussion.
So from my understanding, but I haven't checked it yet, that's not the right, oh, that's Greenkey. Sometimes our website doesn't work well. The select board agenda is bringing you to the Green Communities agenda. Great. So I don't know.
Well, so I think it's on the select board's agenda for the 5th, right?
I just don't know to what extent it is, that's all.
I got the agenda here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, interview employment, town, old business, discuss request for open space, T-ball request, environmental policy, discuss on fiscal year 2024 budget, fiscal year 25 budget, capital plan, annual town meeting warrant, so it's in there. Discuss possible override to address fiscal 25 budget, vote may be taken.
Okay.
So it's on there, under current business.
So I would urge the school committee to go.
To me, this whole thing is, there's definitely people who don't want an override. If we had, and people who definitely don't want the cuts, especially in the schools. I think all this does is provide the voice, the opportunity to vote on it at the town meeting. If it is voted down at the town meeting, the people in this who wanted the school stuff will say, okay, we had our opportunity, it was voted down, move on. I don't want angry people going, oh my God, these, I didn't have a chance to, this was unfair. I think we're a small town, we have the ability to let people have their voice, and that's what town meeting's about. I think you're right, if somebody else came in and threw out numbers that were inaccurate, it would create more problems on the other side if it was approved. Here, at least we can have some basic numbers that we know are reasonable numbers that will get us where we think we want to go, if we want to go there. And if it passes and the people who don't like it get their taxes raised, then they'll know they got their taxes raised based on the ballot and how things work, rather than, some other way. So I think it'll help people accept whatever comes down. This is not a pleasant thing, and my guess is that we'll see a couple more years like this. So we have to, if we don't do it this year, will we do it next year? Maybe, I don't know. These are things that people just have to, I think the goal is a good goal, to try to provide information, provide data, and allow them to vote on it. Again, I would say if the warrant doesn't have enough detail, though, it just says we want to give, town will collect another 1.5 million for schools, or 1.3 million for schools, that might, then someone would have to flesh that out at town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And the more information we give in the warrant, the better it will be.
I think once a number is established, there will be significant time to present it here, present it at school committee, to have public hearings for it, and then to have presentations at town meeting for whether it's supported or not. The critical thing to me still is, what is the school's recommended budget?
Yes.
And until we have any of that, I don't think FinCom can make a recommendation on that, nor can Select Board. And to be honest with you, we've not even been presented the school's budget yet.
Yep.
Some of us have watched that. I was on the meeting last night, but it was just a bunch of silhouettes on the screen with occasional pop-ups that were a little inappropriate.
Wasn't much better in person, I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
They had a giant TV.
But, so, I still think the process is going to play out naturally. But I am ultimately interested in what Select Board says on Tuesday, and then what school committee comes up with on, I think they're on the 6th, right?
Yep, the day after, and that's when they are, Ms. Archambault is going to call a vote for which one they support.
Okay, and then we have another chance to discuss it on the 7th,
Correct.
and then the Select Board has 2 more meetings by which I think they can,
And then we have a public hearing on the 14th as well.
yeah,
I don't know if you heard that one, was last meeting.
yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Which is kind of an incremental public hearing, I think, because we would not have, we still have our public hearing.
Correct, I did not change the 28th. It's an additional public hearing. Because it's a chance to have sort of a pre-open discussion with the public about what, all of this that's come together, the finance, the select board meetings on the 5th and on the 11th. Yeah.
When is
Well-
the school committee supposed to present to us?
The school committee is presenting to us on the 14th, I believe. Yes, it should be the,
Public hearing?
no. Yeah, it is the night of the public hearing, that's convenient.
Really?
Yeah,
Not for that.
I don't know how logistically that's gonna work, but
Yeah.
we're
They've
gonna
got to have a
fire,
public hearing also.
public schools, and a
Right.
public hearing?
The time is tight. It's what we have to work with the time that we have. The other reason is that I think it's important that this be a town discussion rather than just a school discussion. I think having some parent from the school department or from the schools put forward an override that's specifically for the schools does not address if there are needs on the town side as well.
Well, so, last week we grilled a 4-hour change, or a 6-hour change for Council on Aging. My expectation is when the superintendent presents her budget, that we are grilling with that same rigor on every single line item to the extent we've done to the library and the other departments. So, I mean, there should be, it's going to be a long meeting.
It is. She went through it line by line. She went through the expense line by line last night of the 5.4% increased budget that she has. So she said that at least is available online. I agree with you, though. I mean, that's been the request that I've made of the finance committee all season, is that we go line by line on every budget. It's going to be painful, but it's something that we have to do. Because I agree, there are numbers on there that were around the facilities department specifically that were strange. There were increases, and the superintendent did try to explain them away to a certain extent, but she didn't have her facilities person there to really answer the questions. Now that apparently is going to happen, like I said, next week, when the facilities manager will be there, director will be there. But there were increases to a number of lines for, what's that?
At the school?
At the school committee meeting, yes.
Is it going to be here at the public hearing?
I can request it, I'm happy to. I'll add that to the list.
They still don't have a business manager, finance director?
They do not. Nope. Yeah, I will absolutely invite.
Was it also stated last night that Chromebooks were paid using ESSER funding?
I thought I heard that as well. Yeah, I don't know how many, but yeah, I thought I had heard that there were federal funds that were used. I don't know if it was ever said that it was ESSER that was used, but I thought they said it was federal funds that were used. Because that's a line item in there as well, as an increase in the Chromebook purchases.
Yeah, their IT expenses were fairly high, which really surprised me, seeing that it was pointed out that the municipal IT charges were above 3% and should have to live within the 3% budget. That's why I think this whole comparison of of a small department with a massive department is a silly thing to talk about, to be frank. I think we should be looking at perhaps schools compared to all of municipal being on par with equal amounts of raises. But then within municipal, some departments may be low, some may be high, and it's just a timing of the plans that they've laid out. So,
The other thing I found difficult, and I don't know how far down we want to drill, but when you start going through the personnel lines, you don't know how many FTEs correspond to a given dollar amount on some of those lines, because it's multiple bodies.
yeah.
It does, yeah, it gets more complex as well with the tiers, with the steps that they're in, and when they're talking about when you lay off an FTE, you have to go with the least senior person, so that doesn't help your budget as much as it would be if it was the senior person who might be retiring. It's just, it's complex, for sure, but I still think you can get to a number. I don't see, I mean, you have to get to it. You don't have the option. You have to get to a number.
There was another discussion last night that talked about pulling all the school personnel from TC Passios because they're seeing health issues. Why are we maintaining TC Passios at this point? We need to demolish that building, we need to demolish the Brooks House, and we need to go move forward on, getting rid of the, and I understand that PAC is in there, but PAC could rent office space and move into that, or there's other options that could be had for that. But if there's now allegations that perhaps there's health issues being formed because people are in that building, I think it's upon the town to take action on that. And that's after
Who's in
we,
the building?
huh?
Who's in that building?
School
Extended
department.
day, school department, the ACE program, the ACE director, PAC.
Food pantry.
Spending, $300,000 to fix the roof.
Was it $300,000 or $600,000?
300.
300,000.
I mean, I voted against that.
It was part of the
Recommended
roof
against
too,
that last
right?
year.
It was only one section.
Middle section.
Yeah.
Right.
Which isn't even perhaps in the go-forward plan, so why not tear down that portion of it and not repair it? The argument being PAC is in there, but move PAC. Yeah, I mean, rent space for PAC if we need to.
Get an office trailer.
If you want to bring up contentious articles, you could always put an article. It's a demolishing of TCP. No, I agree. We're still stuck in that cycle of let's let the buildings deteriorate to the point where they're not usable, and then let's sit another 10 or 15 years before we actually do something with it until we knock it down.
Yeah, but there's
turn into a
money, there's
T-ball field.
operational money going towards that, and then we're
course.
using capital money towards that.
Plus, if we had approved $28 million 2 years ago, we'd have building in construction right now. A brand-new building.
What would our debt exclusion be, though? What would our debt exclusion be?
I don't remember the numbers. It was doable within our policies.
Well,
that's
yes,
all I know.
we'd fit underneath
Yeah,
the,
within the caps.
right, our 9 and 11% and 14% caps, but what would the debt exclusion be to the taxpayers at that point?
I think they did calculate that number.
I'm sure they did. It's,
I think the town manager said at last week's meeting that she's recommending that we have no borrowings for a while. So if we already did the borrowings, just think of the kind of cuts we'd be talking about. Because that would be, debt's an expense that we still have to pay, whether it's excluded or not, and that money's gonna come from somewhere. So, to me, the issue with the buildings are always been the same thing, is that towns like us don't have the money to do the things that you need to do. And, for example, if it's true that we don't do any kind of building renovation or buildings over the next 2 or 3 years because of financial issues, we can't afford it, then we're going to have these buildings the way they are, and they're going to continue to deteriorate, and and then 10 years from now, we're going to say, why didn't we think about it? It's because we didn't have the money.
Money will always be an issue.
Funding is, yeah, it's always an issue. Churches and towns and not-for-profits are always need more money than they have.
And then 15 years from now, we'll tear down another school, and 30 years from now, we'll tear down a second school.
But this building will survive,
This will be here.
because no one's going to want to tear it down. But it's a very difficult process to go through, and I think as far as the town goes, that's why we have town meetings, let people make decisions. I keep on saying that, but I think the more options they have, the better they'll be. And they might not like the decisions, but at least they'll know it was fair.
I'd like to make a comment, too, about another part of last night's school committee meeting, and that was the special ed supervisors, or whatever her position is, explaining circuit breaker and all the other things that she explained last night. Very easy to understand, sounds like it was very well managed, but I do have, did you guys catch, and maybe I interpreted
There was
this
no
wrong,
audio.
but the out-of-town placement increases, the big one was last year, not this year. So a 20%, when I first heard it a month and a half, 2 months ago, I was hearing a 20% increase in outside placements. Well, that's over 2 years. They've already absorbed 14 point something percent of that increase into this year's budget.
Yeah, there was no audio during that portion of the
Oh, okay.
presentation
Yeah.
for those on Zoom.
The
Hopefully it gets
YouTube,
televised,
the YouTube hopefully, because they had a camera in the room with a microphone. So you should be able to get it on the,
They have to
On
scrub it a
packs.
little bit first.
what's that?
They have to scrub it a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
first. It's not
Just a
uploaded.
bit.
I'm going to put it on for next week's meeting to discuss. The town manager is on the 6th. She's put together a request to meet with Dr. Burnham, Ms. Archambault, myself, Ms. Lockwood, and Mr. Jeffries to discuss projects that require borrowing. So I would like, since apparently I'll be speaking for the finance committee, or at least as the finance committee, I'd like to discuss that ahead of time. Since we're bringing up the discussion of schools being purchased and whatnot in debt exclusion. So I'm going to put that on for next week so we can discuss that a little bit more ahead of that meeting. And I'll see if I can get some more information from her as to what exactly we're talking about.
My perplexed look we'll discuss as a sidebar.
Sounds good. So as far as updates go on the town side, I've made it down through protection as well. So I think I'm about, I don't know, somewhere just under a halfway through. The numbers aren't, as we can assume, staggering on the town side. There are small things, that are not, so what I'm comparing is the FY '25 requested budgets from the department heads versus the preliminary budget as presented by the town manager, and the differential of those two. This is after talking with the town manager. That's kind of where she's saying that if there's extra things that are not being met at a needs basis from the town side, it would be funneled into that requested budget. However, there are changes, obviously, that come up over time with that as well, so those aren't exact numbers. But there are small things that are on here for sure. It's nothing substantial. I think we're talking sub 100,000 so far on on the first third. But I will have a completed number, at least preliminary number for next week, so we can at least discuss it. And I'll run it through the town manager, I'll run it through all the department heads and say, is this number correct? Has this number changed from whenever you submitted the requested budget, which I believe was late last year, I think is when they have to submit those. I will reach out through town manager to return to our counselor
For the 2.5.
for the, yep. Just,
And we never got an answer on,
nope,
which, again, I read that section 3, but, attending another board's, having a quorum at another board's meeting. Again, it specifically states that as an exemption to town meeting.
town meeting, right.
As long as you're not deliberating.
Does legal counsel have office hours? You can, make an appointment for.
Yeah, well, last week, there was an action taken to close on that,
Close on what?
on the, well, the first issue about explaining 2.5, I think should be done during this meeting. Because I think there's all sorts of
Yeah.
questions across all sorts of boards for how that is. So either here, or do it at the select board and we can watch that. It doesn't matter, but at some public forum, you should explain the options for how to work through the 2.5 legally. But the second one, think, Evan, you said you had asked Heather for a,
oh, I did a while ago.
yeah.
I haven't heard anything. I asked her, she forwarded it off to him, I don't know if she's heard anything, but I've seen nothing back.
Okay. Maybe he's too busy with cemeteries.
Yeah, it's at the cemetery meeting on Monday morning, so you want to catch him.
I think that would be a good idea, though, to invite him to our meeting, or at least see if that's possible. Or to the select, I don't care which meeting, but I think he should be involved in a meeting if there's a discussion of an override happening.
Yeah.
I think the select board would be the right spot,
I agree.
because I think they get more eyes,
Audience.
and they're the decision makers, and they can ask all the questions that are necessary. And they're the ones who are gonna have to create the warrant and all that, I mean, not create it, but approve the warrant. So I think it would be better there, but if not, we could have it here.
Yeah, and again, that's why I think the best process for the language and the putting it on the warrant is through the select board.
Yeah.
Because even if we recommend it up to the select board, they can choose to forward it on for us or not. They don't have to.
Right.
I mean, they tend to, but
There's
that's
nothing
usually
that
in a
says-
case where it's a committee looking for something related to their charge.
Right. Changing a bylaw
Yeah,
for the zoning.
yeah. So,
No, I completely agree. I think it should be put forward by the select board, but I don't know if, I don't have any conceptual idea as to whether or not it would.
okay.
Evan, the bottom line is if you hadn't taken the initiative in the past week, it never would have made it in time,
Right.
and we talked about that briefly before a couple weeks ago,
Right.
when we really pinned down the time frame, because nobody was paying attention to that.
Again, that's the reason why I did it, is just, I'm exactly with Tom, it's a democracy, let the town decide.
Yep.
It's not up to me, it's not up to you. It should be a town-wide discussion. It affects the entire town should have the opportunity to speak. All right, is there any other discussion on this for this evening? Okay, so for next week, I will have as many of the numbers for the town side as I can, and have them as well verified through department heads and town manager as I can ahead of time. I'm hopeful that the school committee by Wednesday will also have a number. And by that time on the 5th, the select board will also have had a chance to meet and discuss this as well, so maybe they want to take the baton and I can just hand it right off.
Yeah, I mean, I do hope that the school committee charges that there's a balanced budget number and then an override number.
Yes. So,
Because I think that's the way it should be presented at town meeting is here's a level of service, and here's the level of service we recommend, which requires an override, which means we need to pass it here, and we need to pass it at an
election.
forthcoming election.
That raises a good question, though. Does the school committee have to approve a balanced budget for it to go to the, or can the town manager override and say that this is the balanced budget with the numbers that I need to have the school committee adhere to, or the school department adhere to?
I don't know.
Or
I
can
mean,
or does the school committee have the authority to say, no, we do not accept this budget, we accept this budget? I don't know.
I think town manager prepares the budget, so from that regard, I don't think the school department is any different than any other department. But honestly,
They're not an enterprise fund or anything like that,
yeah,
so.
if they think the number's not 3%, they think it needs to be 3.2 as their bare bones, they're full within their right to start holding, the lines that Tim holds out and says, I want to move 200,000 from this line over to schools, and I want to move 100,000 over to schools. And that's the process on the floor. And honestly, I suspect we might be getting into that this year.
I'm concerned that if this, from what I heard last night from the members of the school committee, it seems like I don't think any of them support the town manager's 2.94 budget, which means if that's what's presented to them, I have a feeling they would vote it down. I don't know if that means anything other than just sort of an argumentative position that they're taking where they say, no, this is wrong in their mind, and this is what we have, this is incorrect, and here's why. But I don't know if it can actually hold up a budget.
Again, it would have to go, it would depend on what the town manager decides to do once they make that decision. And if she sticks to her budget, then the fight goes to town meeting floor.
Right.
There's no other option.
Okay.
And I'm ready for the fight.
Are we gonna get our mints this year on our table? If it's gonna be such a long meeting. Yeah, we used
I
to
don't know,
get
we gotta
mints.
cut that out of the budget, I think.
Bring
True.
pizza.
But
IV bags, actually.
speaking of, bad time to bring it up, but are we gonna need to do a transfer at some point here on meetings in schools?
Probably,
Okay.
yeah, because 3 of us went to MMA, and our budget line is $1,000 for meetings.
I heard where it can come from,
Somebody
with
stayed
really
overnight.
not affecting anything.
Somebody stayed overnight. I didn't.
Somebody did.
I drove
Yeah.
home. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's another identical line item that it can be pulled from what I've been told, so.
I've been told the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to minutes. We don't have any minutes to look into. Committee reports. Are there any committee reports from last week? Oh, actually, before we move on, Ms. Russell, I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything you want to talk about with the override before we close that one out?
I think you're on mute.
Or she fell asleep, which is, I admire.
Which is appropriate.
I completely admire and understand. All right, committee reports. Anybody have anything? I just did the schools, basically.
I listened to Sewer Commission. Apparently, they had a major repair that needed to be done at Mass One. They worked on, what was last week? It was an overnight project, significant money. And they found out additional work that's more money. So they're really looking at their budget, and they're looking at their capital budget, and I think they're gonna be having an article to move money out of, a significant amount out of returned earnings to put into their capital in regard to their sewer pump stations, maintenance, potential future maintenance. And they're working on IMI with Leominster. And there's a third thing, but I can't think of what it is right now. But the pump stations, Mass One pump station is the big issue right now.
All right.
Oh, I think there's going to be a rate increase. That was the other thing.
Do they have any idea how much, or that's still too early for that?
Well, I heard it, I just can't retain it, so I won't say.
You got anything, Tom?
I saw the Board of Assessors meeting, and they did a bunch of questions being asked, and they were good. They did have a letter, which is now on the Lunenburg website. Anybody can go see it. It's a brief letter about the valuations, and it gives percentages on average. One thing that I will, if anyone wants to read it, for the lake people, it is after the changes were made, so it's not I think it was 10% increase, but it was not on the original amount, but on the final amount of the value. And there's actually a link just next to that letter that you can go in and look up your address and see what your valuation was, or is, for this year. So that wasn't good. I think that might be helpful now that they have all that information. I think someone's going to have to set the tax rate based on the amount we can tax before 2.5. But that will give us, also help us with a number once we get the dollar amount. What does that mean for me? Is it $1 per thousand, or 100,000, or is it 20 cents per 100,000? What is it?
Unfortunately, that number is not going to come out as an absolute number until after the warrant closes. So that's another downside.
But at
So
least
we can do it
I
all.
think we can estimate what it could be. So,
Yes and no.
well, they
I
take
mean, a
the,
4.4% increase on 101, I think it's 101 properties, right? Or is that what most of the houses are? Whatever the non-lakefront houses, it's like 101 and 102, or something to that effect. But it's a 4.4% increase on general properties. 30% on condominium.
condos and, yeah, which kind of surprised me, but I'm sure they have all the facts. But, yeah, but wouldn't it be, you take the entire valuation of the entire town, they now have it all done, and do a calculation based on how much money you need to raise, that's how you get the $1 per thousand. So they could do that.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. You get
Yeah, now it's just
$1 billion worth of value when you need to collect X dollars, so you just do the math, and there's your $1 per thousand.
Okay.
I think apartments and condos saw a significant increase, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I saw that.
30%?
And commercial was up too, which I was honestly expecting it to go down, because commercial property is struggling right now.
Class 101 single-family homes, that's what it is.
Yes.
And Class 102 condominiums increased by 30%. Apartment building values also increased by an average of 30%. Commercial and industrial classes increased by 6 to 8%. And a caveat, the Class 101 single-family homes on non-waterfront parcels increased by 4 to 6%. Class 101 single-family homes for waterfront increased by an average of 10 to 14%.
Yeah, so
And for the people watching, that doesn't mean it's within those limits, it's just on average. So yours could be higher or lower, They were just trying to give somebody some kind of average, but you can go in and look and get your value.
That's 10 to 14% of the last cent value, last year's value, or the abated value?
The abated value.
Abated value.
It doesn't say that in the letter, but they specifically said he wished he put that in the letter. It doesn't say in the, yeah, it's as of the final value after the abatements were done. At least that's what I heard. Again, I could be wrong, but I thought he was asking that question. I think one of the citizens was asking that question, and he said, oh, we didn't have time to make the change. But yeah, that should have been in the letter to make that clearer.
The assessor's office phone number is 978-582-4145.
Sorry we gave you all that extra,
Should be
those extra
plastering
work.
that across the screen right about now.
Yeah, it says the preliminary assessed values for FY24 will be available for public review beginning Monday, February 26th through Tuesday, March 5th at the assessor's office, the senior center, and the public library, and the assessor's website, and there will be a printout in front of town hall. And they said you can contact them Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to discuss questions, review and identify errors on your property card, and discuss and request changes of proposed values. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. So that's a tricky one too. I mean, are you going to assess it at 4%, 6%, 5%, 10%, 14%?
Well, each property has already been assessed. Those
If
numbers
you're
in
going to
that
do the
letter.
average though.
Yeah, on it, but I don't know how they got the averages. But every property has been assessed and given an assessed value, so you have a value. You have the total real estate values for the town, and that's what you base, then.
Yeah, I don't understand to say on average and then give a range.
Yeah.
It depends on how your property is rated. Some are below average, some are above average.
But if you're going to say
They are
average, it should be a single number.
You
You can either put
there's
the
a lot of
range or you could put the
variables.
average.
Well,
Right.
we
There's a lot of
got
variables.
both of those for the insurance rates from MIA.
That was the range.
They gave us both numbers.
They gave us the average, which was a single number, and then they gave us the range.
Right.
So the reality is
Isn't
everyone
that
can
what you
look
were
up the
just saying?
value of their house.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Apparently I have outhouses now. I didn't
And-
know that I had, or outbuildings.
And then everyone
The
can,
chicken coop is an
It's
outbuilding?
an outbuilding. The chicken
Oh.
coop and the goat house are outbuildings. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Sell more eggs.
I mean, you could just say that, if the numbers, what's the raise and appropriate number?
32.5 million.
32.5 million? So if we asked for 320,000 in an override, you could say your property taxes will go up 1%, couldn't you?
That's assuming that everyone pays the equal share across the entire levy.
Which they do, based on property value.
Right, yeah, you're right. That's
Yeah,
right.
because
it's by
you're
10
talking
because it's by
percentage,
1,000.
yes.
Okay.
That works that way, yeah.
So if you wanted to do just a simple calculation of you could expect, so if it's, to stay with the round numbers, 3.25 million in override on $32.5 million current levy,
Right.
you could expect your taxes to go up by 10%.
10%,
So if you pay $5,000, it's going to be $5,500.
that's right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, is that acceptable for a number?
If you pay $14,000, it's $1,400.
Is that
500
an,
homes that paid a lot last year already.
yeah. It's a huge sell. Is that sufficient?
The tax rate could go down, right? Because
Well, to stay within,
Well,
it went
looks
down
like
last year.
probably
Based-
will go down.
With a 2.5% increase it will go down because property values went up by more than 2.5%, so it's just a math number.
Right.
The tax rate is just math.
Right.
It's not anything,
It's to maintain, so you're stick within the levy.
right.
That's all it's for, based on the assessed value. So is that a sufficient number for this committee to use? Jay, you had said, make sure we have how it's going to affect people's taxes, and I
Yeah,
completely agree. Is that a reasonable number to use? To say if the number comes down to 1.5 million, and we go off of the levy that was produced by the town manager, and it's a simple percentage of that, we can say that this is the average increase to the average household.
Usually it's a dollar number.
You would want to go to a dollar number specifically? Okay.
Well, dollar per thousand or something like that.
Well, usually they say.
Well, they say this average house, but
Yeah.
no one has the
Well,
average house.
No, but we have an average house number in town that we use. And they say on an average house, expect your tax bill to go up.
In a
It's
printed
$9.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. In a printed document, what they've done in the past is exactly what you were just saying, but then give 3 examples, one high, one at the average, and one at the low side,
Okay.
so that people could, look and say, oh, well, I'm in that group, so I'll be in that ballpark. The other thing that everybody's got to remember is once once an override's part of the levy, that also increases by 2.5% every single year from there forward.
Right, but you don't have to levy to the levy
Right.
limit.
Well,
Yeah,
when
but
have we never done?
What?
But we do.
When is
We
never-
do, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, we do because we need to.
Are we still on committee reports?
We want to.
We went back. Yeah, I mean, technically, this is the Board of Assessors.
Let's wrap it up,
Yes.
10:30.
All right. Anybody else have a committee report?
Just real quick, Green Communities, I don't think I reported this. The Select Board elevated one of our associate members to a full seat, so we now have a full 5-member board. And we do have one other that will be an alternate probably in the near future. So we've still got one alternate seat open. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, I believe it is, at the library. And as I said to the chief earlier, this will be the beginning of our discussions about the April grant round and a few other topics that we're starting to dive into. The other thing I've neglected to mention, I think, is that Kim Duffy, who was just elevated to a full seat, has created a Facebook page for Green Communities, and it's informational only. There's no back and forth on it. And if she hasn't posted it already, it should be up soon, and it explains the streetlight conversion project, some basics as to what the steps were, and all of the numbers involved, including the grant money.
Good.
And she's also now the Green Communities representative for the Municipal Building Design Committee, I believe.
Municipal design, or,
The Master Plan Steering Committee.
Yeah, that's- I
Not
knew-
municipal
I knew-
building.
yeah.
The other one, the
Right.
other over.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kim's delved into quite a bit of involvement in the town.
She and Josie both have.
Yep.
All right, topics for future meetings, I've already got a whole bunch of notes. Anything else anybody would like to discuss? All right, upcoming meetings, there's an error on this, I see it now, March 5th is not a school committee meeting, that's actually the select board meeting. March 6th should be the school committee meeting, so that's an error on the agenda here. We have DPW and facilities on the 7th. Then we have the fire and the public schools on the 14th, which will also be a public hearing. I want to see how we can manage that to make it I'll at least work to keep that within the realm of timed and short as best as possible. 20th is Monty Tech Administration, Unclassified, and Debt Service. And then we round out on the 21st, the next day, with PAC, sewer, other moneyed articles, and an update from the public schools should they have something different that they vote differently at some point. With With that, is there any other public comment from the public? Seeing none,
Anything?
is there any public comment from the committee this evening?
Just a quick question for Chris. I've heard rumor of a capital planning meeting being kicked around. Have you heard anything yet? No? Okay.
No.
I heard it from somebody outside capital planning, so I don't know. Maybe it was incorrect information. Other than that, I'm done.
Did anybody see on the news, I think it's town of Rentham voted no against the MBTA communities?
Milton.
No, Milton voted no and they got sued. Rentham is asking for exceptions from the governor. I don't think they've voted no yet.
Yeah, more towns need to vote no on
I
that.
think we should vote no, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, what was the,
The MBTA
They
community.
lost,
Oh,
they took
oh, yeah.
$140,000 from the attorney general? No.
Yeah, the Attorney General's, or Maura Healy pulled a grant.
Thankfully, that's not up to
Something to
us.
think about.
Put in a citizen's petition.
Go right ahead. Any other public comment? All right, I will happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second?
Ms. Russell?
Barney.
Mr. Passios?
Aye.
Mr. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Simeoni?
Aye.
Mr. Menard?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. It is 10:35. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.